So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's school committee. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the situation.
I believe she is, but we should probably start. You want to give her a minute?
We're gonna do public comment first anyway, so I'll take
Okay.
maybe. who's on the comment.
Now, would both committees have public comment, or just one public comment? Right?
Call for board meeting to review call, take away order, okay, and then we're going to public comment.
Fine.
Okay, so I'm calling select board meeting to order on December 6th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m.
We'll call the Southborough School Committee special open meeting to order December 6th at 6:33 p.m.
Okay, so we always start off with public comment, which is for any comment anyone wants to bring forth to our attention that does not deal with a specific agenda item. If you want to talk about a specific agenda item, you wait for that item comes up. See, I don't see anybody in the audience. Anybody? Okay, so we're ready to jump into our first item, which is basically try to appoint the replacement for Tim Founder on the KCWA Southwell School Committee. Here's the sugar. So we're gonna give. Sure, I'm going to.
See you. How you doing?
You too. I think, yeah.
No.
So as everyone know, Kim passed away suddenly and unexpectedly sadly a couple months ago. Her term is set to expire in May of 24. This meeting tonight is going to take us to the next election. So there'll be a special election in May 23 to basically be for a year until that term ends in May 24. So that's the time we're going to point through May of 23. Okay. It's my understanding that we've got 3 people who have stepped forward and expressed an interest in filling the position for the interim few months. So we're going to talk to all 3 tonight, and then I'll be taking vote to the anniversary. Okay. So Russ, I'm going to turn it over to you at this point. You can explain kind of where you guys are at this point, and then we will talk to Jessica first.
Great. So thank you, Kathy. So this meeting is specifically to appoint someone to the vacancy that Tim Tolander held. Got 3 candidates. Full disclosure, I've talked to each candidate personally a while ago. So I actually, and it was an individual meeting. It was just the candidate and I. The candidates also presented themselves at the last school committee meeting. So that wasn't a question and answer. It was a description of why they were interested in the filling the vacancy or being appointed to the vacancy. So that's background I have. Does anyone have any additional background they want to add to this before we bring the candidates up? Okay.
First. Sit. Okay.
Do you want me to say something first? Do you want to? Let's go.
I'm thinking just kind of a brief description of your interest.
Okay.
Right. And then we'll sort of line up for any questions that anyone might have.
Okay, so as you know, I'm Jessica Devine. I served on the school committee for a term, and it was a challenging time when I was on there. We had a wonderful new superintendent, which comes with a set of challenges when you have a new superintendent. Then we dealt with EEE, which I'm sure you guys may not even remember at this point. And then COVID hit soon after. So it was a very challenging time, but I enjoyed it despite that. And I loved the people I worked with. The only reason I decided not to run again was just reasons having to do with my family. It just didn't make sense for me to run again. Right now I'm on the Trotter School Council. I'm a board member of the Algonquin PTO, and I'm a Southborough Food Pantry volunteer. I believe I'm a strong candidate because I've been on the school committee. Obviously, I know how it works, and there'd be no training time. There'd be no time to tell me what's going on. And it's a position that's lasting only 5 months. So I think that's valuable. I worked hard like I did last time. One of the key things that I did was stay in touch with the community, and I would do that again. And I think it's just important to note that I have no intention of running in the spring. So this is just a very temporary thing for me, just to help out my community and my fellow, my former members of the Southborough School Committee. And Kim was a friend of mine, so, you know, I'd be honored to do this and fill in her spot. So, thanks.
We'll go from left to right. Questions, if any?
I don't have any, actually, maybe you could talk a little bit about what committees, or subcommittees you were involved.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was on the policy subcommittee with Katura, and that was, let's think, what was major step? Well, we got really sidelined by COVID. So I'm not sure how much we actually ended up doing. We did, I think the biggest policy that we did was the, having to do with online, privacy. That was one of the big policies that we did pass while I was there. I wasn't on the budget committee. The big ones for us were budget and policy. So I was policy subcommittee. And I was also the liaison to the seniors, too, which I enjoyed.
One of the areas that's a focus that our previous member drove was around students with special needs and you know, children that learn differently. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what advocacy you have in that space, or how you would like to contribute in that?
So I was also, I forgot that was also a subcommittee. That was just a daily part of what we did. I forget that that's actually a subcommittee. So I was the liaison to NSPAC. So that was, I don't actually, right now I do have a child. It's personal, so I don't know how much I should go into that, but I do have a child who I have to advocate for right now. So that's a personal thing for me right now. And I understand more now from a personal perspective what NSPAC is all about and why it's important as an advocacy. I haven't had to utilize NSPAC personally yet. But I understand the importance of it. And when I was on school committee, I'm trying to think, I mean, everything was just so dominated by COVID. It was COVID 24/7. So a lot of things got pushed to the side. I mean, that was really what we did with COVID. So everything that I kind of, like my main things that I wanted to do when I was running was I wanted to get communications better. And that was something I've seen has gotten a lot better since I haven't been on school committee. And then I think it was my last year, I was the NSPAC liaison, but because of COVID, there wasn't a lot to do. So I guess I can't really talk too much to it, Molly, because
I think
COVID
we
was
did,
so
right?
dominating.
I think that's
Okay.
So I actually remember in the policy subcommittee, I think that what some of the things we did before COVID hit were, I remember working on the transportation policy. and
Oh my
homework
gosh, yeah,
policy, I
of
think,
course.
together.
Yeah.
So it was great working with you on that.
Yeah.
And I don't have any specific questions. I was going to mention the communication piece, and I think that was another area of focus that, you know, Kim brought to us and is important, obviously. And I know that you also have had a focus on communication. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that how much could be done in the next 5 months, but
I'd be really
Yeah.
interested to see what, because I've been involved with Parent Square on the APTO side for the high schools. So I'd be interested to see just, you know, on the K-8 side, what's going on with that from a school committee point of view.
thank you.
I have no questions. We worked together 3 years.
Yep.
I guess I'll comment that as as you mentioned, we hadn't moved the communication forward very much. During your term, but the whole reason we moved it forward was because of the drive that you have put when you were there. So,
Good.
you can
Thanks.
take some credit even though it's kind of afterwards.
I just got up, I really have any questions that haven't already been asked, and I really appreciate your willing to volunteer for this position at this time, just kind of an important time. Have this vacancy filled. And, thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you. As you noticed, I've attended a lot of the school committee meetings while you were serving, so I think I've got a good feel for the work you did then, so I don't have any questions at this point. Thank you for stepping forward.
And same here. Thank you for stepping forward. It's not always easy to step back in. Kim left some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
I appreciate your honesty in not looking, to move forward with an election and move forward, but to hit the ground running for the last 5 months. So thank you for stepping forward. I think it's important what you've done in the past, and thank you.
Thank you for stepping forward and for all the time that you've already committed to our community on school committee and everything else that you've done. I just have one question. What grades are your kids in?
8th and junior in high school.
As I think COVID, you missed 3 years of other kids, other people's kids last year.
I know.
Don't remember how old.
I
So,
know, yeah.
thank you.
So I have no questions. Jessica, I think anybody else would thank you for stepping in.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Dr. Lee?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hi again to most of you. My name is Z Lee. I am a new resident in Southborough, moved here in August. I lived in Shrewsbury before. So I'm a scientist. I work for a pharmaceutical company up in Devon. I lead a group of 20 scientists or engineers there to help my job is to help manufacturing colleagues to make medicines that can be used to treat cancer and other things that you don't want to have. So, but really, I'm here to tell you about my passion about education, about serving the community. When we lived in Shrewsbury, I love spending time with my daughter Emma, who's in 3rd grade now. But when we were in the Shrewsbury School District, I served on her school council for a year as a parent member, also cutting there through a very competitive process, but just less intimidating. And also, I was a substitute teacher in Shrewsbury. I taught different grades, first grade to 6th grade there. Just used my vacation days to help the community when there was a shortage with on substitute teacher. So I helped the community there. Also, I've been coaching Emma's softball team in Shrewsbury and Southborough, coached several seasons. So really just a way of spending time with Emma and also helping the community. And after we moved to Southborough in August, the first thing I did was I talked to the principal of her new school, and I volunteered to join the school council in the new school. So we still need to have our first meeting yet, but I'm very excited to get this opportunity to serve in the school council there. And also I emailed the town to express my interest in serving the school committee, really to continue my passion, my efforts in serving the community in on the education side. So I myself have gone through many years of education. That's my passion, and I want to help out the kids in the school district and really serve the community with my passion and my education background. So, and thanks for the opportunity for being here and introduce myself. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have 2 questions, actually. Sorry if you can hear me.
Yeah, I
The
can.
first question is whether or not you would plan to run for election when the temporary period is over. And then my second question is, are there any like special areas of interest or passion that you have specific to any educational piece or what we've done in the school committee in the past or things that in the future you're particularly interested in?
Yeah, definitely. So I was planning to run for the new term. Because when I volunteered in August, I was told, there's no vacancy, so I was going to wait for the next term. So, I know it's for a sad reason that I'm here today, but I hope I'm allowed an opportunity to fill that shoe temporarily, and then I'll be running for the new term. So, the second question, I am particularly interested in STEM education. That's where my education background is. And also I spent, effort in when I spent time, focusing on that area when I served in the Shrewsbury School Council there. I helped drafting the school improvement plan for the new school year. I focused on the STEM initiatives. So that's one area I think I can contribute a lot. And also my experience in substitute teaching can also help me with really interacting with the kids, and also some of the things you mentioned earlier, working with students of special needs. So I've worked with the other teachers in our classrooms for that too. So I can also bring my experience to that. So yeah, that's where my experience mostly lies.
Thank you, Zee, and I'm so impressed as, by being a new resident, that you want to step into this role. So I want to congratulate you and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Enthusiasm. One of the things I want to know is, as a board member, not only are we talking about education and how we're going to improve or add to that for the students, but there's a lot of business and analytics and policy development. Could you tell us a little bit about maybe some other leadership roles that you've been in outside of work, but maybe where you kind of worked in that capacity?
Yeah, I was just gonna mention about my work experience, but I lead a very big team, so I have a lot of experience in budget planning for my group there. But outside of work, and most of my experience here, locally, come from those experiences I just mentioned, serving the school, coaching in those teams. So obviously not to the level of the school committee, doing the budget planning. Specifically, in my school council experience, we worked on the school improvement plan, drafting the mission statement, picking the mascot, for all the areas that I don't necessarily interact with from my daily life or work experience, but it's some of the things that I learned from serving in a council like that and working on topics that are related to the school activities. So, but at a higher level, or at a more complicated level, that's something that I'm curious to explore if I get the experience in the school committee.
Okay, we're sort of covered any questions that I may have. Thank you very much for stepping forward with that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I also thank you, and I also don't have any questions. I do remember that when we had that Zoom meeting, I threatened to ask you questions about the details of your work. But I still.
How much time do we have here?
Yeah, I still don't think I can come up with a challenging one. So, but thank you for volunteering.
I'll be able to try to anyway.
Could you just explain further what the school council in Shrewsbury that you participated in and what the nature of that was?
Yep, yeah, we met monthly, so we had the principal, assistant principal, and teacher members and parent members. So I got in, through a competitive election process, but got selected by parents' vote, got in there. So we met monthly. We discuss issues and basically help the principal's office make decisions on certain topics, like example that I mentioned. We were given an older draft of previous school year's school improvement plan, and we discussed and worked on the new, for the new school year. And then the mission statement, because it was a brand new school. They just built that, right, just the summer before we started the new school year. So we worked on some of the new initiative, like drafting the school mission statement. So that was also one of the things we did in those monthly meetings. So yeah. Yeah, these are some of the examples I can think of.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Pass it the baton to you.
Thank you. Again, thank you for stepping forward. I'm impressed that, as has been mentioned, a relatively new resident in town already going for something that's a pretty substantial commitment of time. So I'm impressed. It took me several years after I moved to town to sort of figure out what was going on and where I might want to get involved. So, and I'm still trying to figure some of this. But clearly, strong credentials, good track record in education. Have you actually watched or participated in some of the school committee meetings since you've been here, other than the most recent ones?
Just the most recent one, where I, met everybody in the community, in the committee. Yeah.
But not before that.
No, not before that.
Again, you certainly seem to have a passion for the job, and that's very impressive. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I really just want, because I started doing all these things in Shrewsbury. So as soon as I moved in Southbury, I wanted to continue that. I didn't want it to stop. So I reached out and, explored all these opportunities.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Welcome to Southborough.
Thank you.
It's nice to see new faces. Nice to meet new faces.
Yeah, by the way, Jess and I are neighbors. Just a few houses away. So.
So again, thank you for stepping forward. I appreciate, again, your willingness to do this and doing it, in Shrewsbury as well. If you're not selected tonight, potentially for the interim position, would you still be interested for running for school committee in the
Yeah.
spring?
Yep, that was the plan. I was going to do that, and Jess will be my best resources on that, because she ran successfully before. So we talked, putting up the board and getting signatures. So that's the process I'm also looking forward to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping forward for this, especially being new. That's great. I do have one question. We're entering a time of year with budget season. And I know, Greg in the back is busy with his team getting all the numbers together. What kind of value would you bring to the school committee in terms of the finance side?
So as mentioned, honestly, as I mentioned earlier, right, finance side is the area that I'm not familiar with outside of work, right? And in work, I do I do the budget planning for my 20-member group, so it's also a lot of responsibility. So I have experience in my work space, but outside, I think I got my first impression from the last committee meeting where we went through the budget planning. So that's something new that I learned. The areas, school infrastructure, maintenance, and also school initiatives where we spend money on. So these are the areas that I've only had limited interaction as a parent, because as parents we talk about these things, but as a a committee member, right, this will be something new to me.
Thank you.
So, this resume is totally intimidating. So you said you substituted, well, you taught a lot, you've done TA, you've got lots of work, so it sounds like you put a good use. When you were a substitute teacher, what grades were you substitute?
So I've taught 6th grade, 5th grade, 1st grade, 3rd grade. Yes, I wasn't allowed to teach 2nd grade because my daughter was in 2nd grade. Yeah.
So, I don't know what we're gonna do tonight, but you are in welcome addition to this community. There's lots of places that you could be of value, just so you know. We'll talk about those later, as far as places go there, but this is just great. The STEM is great. We know in the husband has been girls, Emma has got a very, she's lucky to have you put that for sure. I mean,
Thank you.
I think it was- so she will go up and look back, and I'm sure, appreciate everything that you've done. Northborough puts on a, STEM for women, every March or so. So you ought to get involved in that, and have somebody come in like an afternoon or something to speak with you, it's great to have a chat. So it's really nice, it's trying to focus on like teaching women, the best of instincts and that, so.
Yep,
anyway,
Definitely.
I'm really glad that you're in this town. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Joanna?
So unlike my peers, I do have a prepared speech, just because I get a little bit nervous. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna read from my speech. All right, so. I wish it could be off the cuff, guys. All right, so thank you for the opportunity to introduce and tell you a little bit about why I'm passionate about serving on the Southborough School Committee. My family has lived in Southborough since 2014, and in that time, I have built extensive ties to the Southborough community. Both of my kids, ages 12 and 9, have gone through elementary school in Southborough, starting in pre-K. My younger daughter started in the Finn pre-K program in 2016, and I've worked extensively with school teams at Finn, Woodward, and Neary on her complex IEP. In this process, getting to know the principals, the teachers, and the many therapists and specialists in our schools. Our entry into the SPED world was and continues to be a learning process at every stage of development, and every progression to the next step brings about new learnings and surprises. I found it rewarding to share these experiences and help families navigate similar challenges by serving on the board of the NSPAC since 2019, where I currently serve as vice president. This year, I am also a member of the Neary School Council. Overall, in the past 8 years of living in Southborough, I have volunteered many hundreds of hours in our district schools and the neighborhood communities in various capacities, including SOS, NSPAC, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, PTO activities at Faith School, Neary School Council, the Sage House Residential Treatment Program in Framingham, and Clover Hill Farm in Berlin, where my older daughter is an avid horseback rider, and that's pretty much her second home. While I find all of my volunteer work rewarding, and the work that I am most proud of includes, I have organized and produced the Go the Distance Awards. For those of you not familiar with Go the Distance, NSPAC hosts an annual event to honor in our community, those in our community who have an outsized impact on a student with a disability. 98% of the recognizees of the people recognized at the event are teachers and other specialists within our district. Over 100 people attend the event, including district administration, principals, teachers, and staff. This is a feel-good night, shining a light on those making a difference in our children's lives. Additionally, I am proud of my work to bring innovative, experienced, and thought-provoking speakers to our community through NSPAC Speaker Series on topics related to autism, executive function, learning disorders, disability estate planning, IEP process, transition planning. And this year, with our focus being on peer acceptance and inclusion, we're bringing programming related to this topic along with speakers that will talk to our community about ADHD, collaborative problem solving, and anxiety. I work closely with Marie Allen, our Director of Student Support Services, and others on Superintendent Martin's team, providing insight and feedback on special education programming, curriculum, and bringing a parent point of view to the challenges faced by families in the community related to SPED programming within our district. Lastly, I'm proud of my work establishing greater lines of communication between NSPAC and members of the current school committee, as well as establishing a monthly email newsletter with topics of import for NSPAC and the disability community. My professional background is in corporate IT program and project management, where for 15 years, I was responsible for managing large teams and executing complex global projects. I've held senior management positions at Dell EMC, Virtustream, Staples, and Travelers Insurance Company. And in that time, brought many critical projects from inception to successful conclusion through communications across all levels of management, collaboration, coordination across departments, a penchant for out-of-the-box thinking and problem solving.
Working on NSPAC projects underlined for me how important it is to have a strong connection and feedback loop between NSPAC, the school committee, and district administration. I believe, as my dear friend Kim Tollander did, we worked together for 2 years on NSPAC. That by serving the school committee, I can contribute a unique perspective on curriculum and programming within our districts. I left my corporate career in 2017 when time constraints of managing both of my daughter's care, therapies, education, and services for their disabilities became too heavy to manage alongside a professional career. I feel so fortunate that our family was able to accommodate that and is allowing me to turn my pursuits towards the community volunteer work and advocacy for special education that I'm so passionate about. While I am no longer working in a professional capacity, the skills that I developed over my time in the corporate environment, volunteer work through SOS, and collaborating with school teams on my daughter's many IEP complexities give me a well-rounded and unique perspective on the strengths and weaknesses within our school district. I feel that my extensive professional and personal experience, communication skills, long-term commitment to volunteering in multiple capacities, and passion for working with children, educators, support staff qualify me to serve all families in our community as a Southborough School Committee member. I would be honored to be considered for this open appointed position tonight, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I have the same 2 questions. So first of all, would you plan on running for the election, the upcoming election? And then my second question was just a tweak on that, that I asked before. I know you have been, I know all your experience with NSPAC and the great work that you've done there. What other areas outside of that are you particularly passionate about that school committee does, whether in the past or something that we're planning on doing?
So, thank you, Jen. So yes, I do plan on running for the May election. And outside of SPED, I'm also, it's kind of like sort of related, but like I'm very passionate about diversity, equity, and of course, inclusion. So there's a bunch of programs that specifically, again, as PAC, we're working with the district on related to diversity, equity, inclusion. I also have a passion and I'm hopeful to get on the DEI committee as well to forward a lot of the work to bring stories from the community out to those in the community from kind of like all walks of life, including those with like disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that overview. As you said in your opening, you looked at everything that qualifies you for this. Have you taken any consideration into some of the things that you may not be able to continue alongside of the school committee, and how is that impacting your continue running? Yeah.
So thank you, Kamali. We have talked about it. So I work very closely, obviously, on NSPAC with Alyssa Deegan and Nicole Maher, who are the other 2 people on the NSPAC committee. And we work very tightly and collaboratively on everything that we do. They know that I have been interested for a while in running for school committee. And we have been actively trying to engage with the community and recruit new members. We actually have a new member who's going to be elected onto NSPAC in our December general meeting. So because they know that I have this passion and I do want to try to move on and potentially run for school committee, if I'm not appointed tonight, run for the election in May. We are trying to actively recruit so that I can take more not a secondary role, but more an advisory role to the committee if I have other things that will be put onto my plate. Right now, I also volunteer some with Cub Scouts, but that's kind of like up and down. I'll continue to volunteer at the barn that I volunteer at right now, just because my daughter's there like all the time. I literally live there as like a second home. And as far as, Neary School Council, they only meet, once a quarter. So I think that that's a relatively low time commitment. So these are all things, that I feel that I can handle on top of being on top of, the school committee. Plus the fact, like I said, I'm fortunate enough right now where, I'm not working in a, professional job. Volunteering for the community is my job. This is what I'm passionate about. And so I really put all of my time in.
I'm familiar with your materials and everything, and I appreciate you coming forward, and I don't have any questions right now. Thank you so much.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for coming. I also don't have any questions. Again, sort of full disclosure, I've worked with Joanna on the NSPAC meetings for the last several years. I think I was an official representative of the school committee, and also just sometimes when I could do it and not violate the forum. We also had a chance to get her outside of NSPAC and kind of talk about her experiences. So I don't really have any questions that I can add. But thank you for thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you for having me.
I think you gave a very pretty comprehensive description of the qualifications and interested in this position.
Thanks for stepping forward, and very impressive special education experience here, critical skill of your experience, so great to hear. Following on one of the questions we asked earlier, have you followed the school budget process much? School finances is a very busy team. Coming up on budget season, that's going to be a topic of active consideration of the next several months of next year. There's strange twists to that. So do you follow that process much, or would that be a learning experience for you?
In full transparency, that would be a learning process for me. I have started going through the school committee meeting minutes and pulling down the budget spreadsheets that they've started pulling together. I've also gone through, and I believe it was in the October meeting minutes where the school committee budget priorities were outlined. So I have taken a look at that as well. So I'm a fast learner. When I was in my professional career, I did have to manage very large budgets for multidisciplinary teams. And so I have budget experience from my professional career. I manage the budget for my household. I'm the CEO of my household. And like I said, I have started taking a look at the spreadsheets, and I followed the budget process for the school committee the past like a couple of years, just not from the capacity of being on school committee, just from the capacity of being a resident and a concerned parent.
Thank you. It is complicated, and I followed it for years. I still get surprised reading it, so I'm going to drag others to untangle stuff. The state gets involved, all of that stuff. Thank you. Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for stepping forward. Just wanted to say one thing specific. I wrote down a bunch of notes. You may not have a professional job, but you have the most important job is being a mom and an advocate. And there is no job more important than that. So I just wanted to say that because you said a couple times, it's not my professional job anymore. You have a more important job now. I can relate to you very much. I have a child that was on an IEP that participated in the Go the Distance awards, and some of the people and the paths he crossed have changed his lives in so many positive ways. And our kids can change the world. My son has gone on and he's serving the public. He's an EMT. He's doing amazing things. And it was because of the schools and the guidance and the acceptance that he got within the schools. So your story is very close to my heart, and I thank you for sharing it. Again, I would hope no matter what happens with this interim position, that again, you would also consider running in the spring. I mean, voices need to be heard, and advocacy still needs to always happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if I can follow that. And Sam took my question, so. I appreciate your passion. Obviously, this is something that you're very interested in. And I appreciate all the advocacy that you do for your kids and for all of our kids. We're in the schools now, and it's so obvious we're so lucky to have the groups that you're involved with, to have the staff that we have, which obviously flows into budget discussions too. So there's a lot of moving parts. So it's, this is extremely important. So thank you for stepping forward and for all the work that you do and you'll continue to do.
So this is so refreshing meeting from creating, starting off with people like three people truly such a time for this meeting. So thank you so much. You are a very accomplished young woman, and obviously a great mother. The reason you don't have a budget is because the schools, when you put the school together, it's about 70% of the whole town budget. So it makes or breaks the budget.
Yeah.
One way or the other. And I'm looking at Greg, right? We gotta pay for everything too, so, but I don't have any questions other than just to thank you for doing this. Clearly, you're going to be successful, whatever you do. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I have a question about, well, let me offer up a suggestion. I have a recommendation, which I would, I think, put forward in the form of a motion. If that's seconded, I would then explain the reason for my motion. If it's not, we'll move on. Is that acceptable?
It is.
So I would move that we appoint Jessica Devine to the vacant seat in the school committee. I'll make that motion.
For a second,
Second,
who seconded?
I did.
Sure. Yes, we've got a motion in a second, so any further discussion?
I do have some.
Okay.
So let me tell you my reasons. And I have two. And it's actually, it's difficult for me because I haven't known Lee very long. I've known Jess and Johanna for a much longer time. They're, I think they could all do the job. But let me give you reason number one. We took a little while before we made a decision to appoint anyone to this position. And if you, at the school committee meetings, the discussion either was almost unanimous or unanimous. That the problem we had in not moving forward was that this is an elected position. And we didn't feel good about kind of replacing that process with an appointment. You basically have four individuals who are now basically choosing, and at the time of it was just four individuals, not 9. But just making a choice that the town usually makes through an election. So there's a second part of that. And that is that the fact that Jess is not, she's already identified she's not going to run. If this means that Jess will not have, because she's not going to run, that this position will not have an advantage by being, quote, an incumbent, okay, going into election. And I think I don't think we should give anyone an advantage if we have a way to do otherwise. So that's really my reason number one. Reason number two, as Jess said, she hits the ground running. She's very familiar with working with the committee. This is going to be a difficult year, especially budget wise. I think everybody's going to put their hand up. It's going to have some different kinds of difficulties that COVID had. My own experience was she worked very well with the committee, and it's not a long tenure. It's only 5 months. So you don't have too much time to get started, and by the time you get started, you're done. So those are my two reasons. And I guess Anyone
So
else?
let's Hear hear from the school committee, rest of them first. And then-
Yeah, so I seconded the motion, and the reason I feel good about doing that is, you know, my hesitancy kind of all along in terms of appointing for such a short period of time was that there is a learning curve. It's, you know, and anybody can learn it, but there is a curve. And so sort of by the time you kind of get a curve, the whole process is going to be over basically. And so it would be, I think, tremendously helpful and beneficial to the committee to have Jess, somebody who's kind of been through the process, is familiar with all of the terms and the, you know, the way this all goes. And it will actually be an asset in such a short period of time. So I think that's my primary reason for support. Great.
I would agree with what you both stated. I think that it's really hard because we have three really great candidates, not like any of them to sit with us. I do think that given the fact that we're right in the, you know, we have a budget committee meeting coming up next week, you know, and it's already been a rocky start. We have the calendar discussion. So there are a couple of things that basically someone needs to come in and be able to just start running this, so as opposed to having to train someone of how to go through the process, getting this out of the way. Whereas like during election period, there's an optimal time to get people eased into the system so they know what they're doing as they go through the process. So I think that for me is one reason. I think I agree with this idea of, I personally don't like to have to just nominate someone to an elected position. I think that, you know, I've worked with Jess. I know she was elected by the community. She has a lot of the same interests, and she actually, Kim, when she replaced, when she was not elected, took over a lot of the things that Jess was doing. I would suggest if she were to come back in, would be able to take the ground running with those. I think either of the other two candidates would be wonderful too. Just think given 5-month period, it's probably the best solution in my mind. And then the other thing I'd like to say is to encourage the other candidates to please run for elections. I think, you know, I think we really think
Yeah, I would just add that, it's always difficult for me to feel like I'm, going left. But I'm gonna move. So I think that because of the engagement that Johanna has already with so many of the initiatives that we are working on, I don't think that she would have trouble with the meetings that we're gonna have this week, next week, you know, and starting in January. The things that, you know, I haven't said this to you, but that I feel like she's bringing to the table is like the attention to detail. That's gonna be integral in the next couple months. Being able to like read through research and actually come up with proposals of how we should do something or what we should revise in terms of program and funding, et cetera. I foresee that she's gonna bring that to the table. For Jessica, I just think that because she's had that experience in the past, I know that she can do it, but I almost think it would be an asset to have like this new voice. So those kind of where those are my thoughts on the two candidates. I think that this is a reopening. I think all three of them would be great participants on the board. I think all three of you can feel proud to know that either of you take this appointment. I know I certainly would. So yeah, I don't think you know, those are my thoughts, you know, I'll share, those are my thoughts on, you know, where we can go. This can be.
My thinking is pretty much the same as Rogers, where there's 3 outstanding candidates, 2 of them are gonna run for election, one of whom is a past member who'd be coming in to fill a short term. I feel like if I am to instead choose one of the other two people who are running, and kind of feel like it mixes almost how my role as like a voter in an election in May versus voting in a select board capacity now in December. So I think that appointing Jessica to the position, keeps things more neutral. And then I'm very excited that I think there's two outstanding candidates that are very engaged, bring a lot of energy, and that's what we need for elected positions in town. And so I'm really encouraged by that. And that's why my vote, I think, is going to be the same as Rogers.
I'll echo the comments. It's a great problem to have three candidates who are, in my view, very well qualified for different reasons in some cases, but I think we've all served with any of these candidates here. For me, the big issue is it's an important job on many levels, not only important in terms of the lives of families and children in town, but important from a budget standpoint, et cetera. And I'm a strong believer in the voters having the choice for those kinds of decisions. And I think that, as has been mentioned, incumbency is sometimes overrated, but it's clearly a significant factor in many elections. And I don't think it's a fair thing at this point to inject that artificially from the appointment here. And the voters, I think, ought to be to decide. So I think Jessica serving the remaining term here leaves that process sort of neutral, if you will, between the candidates here in the province. And I think that's the way it ought to be in terms of public choice for this position. So thank you.
I agree with what's been said, but I think one of the most unique things is we're presented with an opportunity that one of the things that we talked about tonight is budget. And we have an opportunity that for 5 months, there's a seat that can be filled, but during this 5 months, all the budget discussions take part. So I would hope no matter what the decision is tonight, that, the two that don't, that may potentially run again, will participate in the next 5 months, just to see what an important part of the budget process is, as you move forward. And I think that will benefit you as you move forward as well, and as you run. I kind of shared the same concerns that, again, I wish we could appoint everybody tonight. I mean, this is really tough. This is probably one of the tougher ones I've sat on since I've been on the board. So kudos to you all for that. But I think, with the election coming, I think it would behoove us to allow the voters to let their position be known. But again, you guys are pretty tremendous, and I'm pretty impressed to sit here with you tonight. So thank you.
I agree with everything that's been said. I think we're in a tough position tonight. And I hope we don't discourage any of you from continuing to participate in everything that you do and everything you're going to do in the future. I think the town will be very well served. But I think for this short period of time, having stability of just stepping in and not having a huge ramp up would be the most beneficial for the residents. So thank you all for stepping forward. I really appreciate it.
So of course, I'm last, and there's not much to say. We've had, I think it is important that we keep the field neutral, and I am so, I love you guys, so I do hope you both do run, let's say. If you decide to, the process starts in mid-March, you need to see town clerk, and he'll explain to you how it works, and I get signatures, etc. There's a little paper that you done to get it done. There we go. So, but I just keep taking the first time to really is. I'm pretty well, this whole group tonight. So, yeah, everybody starts to see. Okay, so we got a motion on the table for the second, which is to fill the term through the next election date.
Yes, we need to make a motion as well.
All right, this is a joint meeting. Okay, so right, so I'll make a motion that the select board. So first, the appointment of Jessica to fill the term through the next election date of May 2020. Second, so both groups have made a motion for a second to discuss it. Again, it's a joint appointment, so we need 5 of this 9 to approve this, and then all in favor of the motion that we should discuss. That's 9-0. So thank you guys, and Jessica, really nice to meet.
Yeah,
both of you.
absolutely. Thank you.
Serious, we hope to see you again.
Thank you for all your work.
Could I make a comment, Madam Chair? I want to echo, the difficulty of this decision. Hopefully that came through. With 3 folks here collectively, have yourselves to blame for that. Okay, if you weren't all, I think candidates that we think would do an outstanding job, it would have been easier. And I'd just like to make a comment to Mr. Lee, and you know, we're hoping that both Johanna and Z run. I did notice that the select board chair hinting that she might try to steal you away for other things, right, in the community. So make sure you take papers out and run for the school committee.
But no, what I'm really waiting for is for you to talk to him about one of his papers on the second page that he.
I was gonna ask about that too.
What I was wondering is the substitute teaching the 3rd graders biotechnology. Well,
That is one of the things that he and I talked about. Is like, so what did you teach them when you were there? And where they're all, well, I shouldn't be worried, but I'm excited that they all might end up being scientists, okay?
Roger, do we collectively have the power to increase the size of the school board to 7 members?
That's up to the town clerk.
Thank you.
So.
Thanks, Chris.
I think the Roger, you want to adjourn?
I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Katura, second by Kamali. All in favor? Opposed, so we are adjourned at 7:29. Thanks for,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you, and thanks for spending a little extra time. No, this was more time than was budgeted on you all on the agenda.
Yeah.
I think it was important.
So we're gonna take a few minutes this week.
Yeah, that's my show, the chair.
Notice.
We had a hand raise. Hand raise.
down the excitement level. Oh, that's what you're- Should be fairly calm.
So we are going back in session at 7:35. Okay, so we're ready for the whole hearing with National Grid and Verizon, and we're hoping that the phone number that we see in the audience is one of the two. So, the hand is raised, we're assuming that's why you raised it. So Vanessa, why don't you bring over door one?
Two hands.
Two hands.
Okay, and so it's like my parents, okay, so bring over both of them.
Good evening. This is Michael Parent from National Grid.
Feedback, just so you know. Okay, so you're from National Grid, Michael. What about, is 401 out?
That was my other number. I
Oh,
I
okay,
just
so it's
wanted
just
to,
you.
I want to have a backup plan just in case sometimes there's some issues
All right,
with
so you're doing it,
connections.
all right.
I just
okay,
shut that
so-
number off.
Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to open the whole hearing.
It's already open. We can, this is.
We're continuing this,
It's a
okay, so we're gonna
continuation.
continue. Nope, last time, and we didn't have anybody here, so we're continuing the hearing that we opened at the last meeting to basically hear from National Grid and Verizon about a new pole at 9 Plymouth. Okay, it's all your,
Oh, so this pole is, we're requesting to install this pole on town property to feed the service at house number 7 Clemens. And I believe in the future, it's to serve another new house at number 9 Clemens as well.
anything else?
That's pretty much it.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have my standard question. In the event that at some point we want to put a sidewalk in there, the idea is that we like to have poles located far enough back from the roadway that a sidewalk could fit in there. I've actually driven over there and looked at it. It's not totally clear to me exactly where the pole is going to go relative to the current. There's a temporary pole here. It looks like feeding power to the house under construction. But again, the goal would be to leave room for a sidewalk if there is room in terms of the street and setback here in terms of, I don't know where the town property line is there. Do you happen to know if there is room to do that?
I personally don't know the town take in that area. And I don't also know if there are other poles on that other side. The sketch I have shows the poles on the other side of the road. I don't know if the town has a preference, whether they be more towards the front of the sidewalk area or the back. But we could address that if we had a contact from the town. We could set the pole. I'm not sure if it's been staked yet. I would hope it would be, but we can work with the town to determine the best location to put it in for future purposes if need be.
That's what I would ask. And the DPW superintendent, Karen Gallagher, is the best person to
We'll get you.
connect with on that, I think. So, but again, I looked for stakes. I had a hard time seeing any stakes there for new poles. So there was construction going on, so it wasn't clear to me.
So
Exactly.
sometimes we put stakes out and they disappear for one reason or another, whether a truck runs over them or somebody walking by takes it out, or it's tough to stake stuff early and have it sit out there for a while because you never know what could happen.
Okay, that would be my request, I guess.
Make sure we get. Anybody else have a question? Chelsea? No. Andrew?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve the request by National Grid Verizon to put this pole in at 9 Plymouth.
With the request that they
The request,
locate it.
with the request that Mr. Sivers made that they attempt to locate it in a manner that is conducive to put the sidewalk in.
Second, if possible.
Sorry, everybody got it? Yeah. All right, we got a motion, got a second, all in favor? Thanks, so 5-0. Okay, so I think we're done, so now a motion to close the poll hearing.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, closed. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Have a good night.
First. and then
Yeah.
vote, I guess.
So,
Should have closed first and then, vote, I guess. That's okay. Minor-
We can fix it in the minutes.
minor detail.
Moving
Minutes are-
on, moving on. Okay, so is Leslie? I don't think so. Okay, you want to wait to talk to her? You want to appoint her without talking to her? Freddie did send a letter of recommendation, but I don't know her. Do you know her?
I don't,
Okay, so let's do on the 20th. All right, Melissa, is she? So can you bring Melissa? up? There she is.
Good afternoon or good evening. How is everyone?
So Melissa, thank you for coming. So we are continuing a series of meetings with certain boards, commissions, departments, et cetera. So you're number 3, and you're very high on the list, so you know, Todd Shield definitely want to bring you in. So, you always have lots of good things to say, so we thought we would, invite you in.
Perfect. So I'm just gonna go over a couple, quick things. If the board has any specific questions, please feel free to let me know and I'll answer them the best I can. The first update I wanted to give you was about the Breakneck Hill Farm Dump. So we are still waiting for the abutter to sign the access agreement, unfortunately. At this point, I think we're kind of unsure on what that final outcome will be, but we're hopeful we're gonna have a resolution very shortly either way. We do have a path forward in each situation, no matter what happens. So we're just kind of waiting for that finality to really understand what DEP will allow us to move forward with, whether it's just on our property or our property and the abutting property. So after we get that resolution, then we can either do the additional test pitting on the abutter's property, or we will just move straight into starting to create that cleanup plan for Breakneck Hill. Just on its own without on the abutting property. I got to give a kudos to TRC, who's been our LSP for this project. They've been very on top of kind of getting the site sorted out, reaching out to the abutters and her engineer to discuss and being on site, as much as possible, and also looking ahead and thinking of, getting on top of what DEP would require, especially in things like these asbestos containing materials. I'm not very familiar with, so they took those necessary steps to get them covered in the meantime. So if you drive down Breakneck and you see some plastic, clear tarps through the distance, that's what they're covering. Those samples that came back with some asbestos containing materials, mostly shingles, very expected materials for the timeline that we knew about and what kind of the use was of the property. So we're hoping to stay on schedule and be able to have a proposed cost ready, either for town meeting or whether it's going through capital. I know me and Mark are still kind of working out those details, and he's the expert on that aspect, but that's kind of where we are for the farm dump. Before I move to the next one, is there questions specifically on Breakneck?
Just to be clear, as far as what you just now said, you expect the thing to be such that whatever we need to do to clean it up and spend, you'll have that information ready for town meeting? That's what your goal is?
That's what the goal is. Yep, that's what the timeline within the ministerial consent order is kind of laid out to be. We do have kind of the clause in there that, something does go wrong at town meeting or there are unexpected delays. We do have some ability to extend that timeline if necessary, but my goal and what we seem to be on track with is to get this completed in the schedule outlined in the ACO, which would have the cleanup being done next year or next fiscal year. So by the end of 2024, hopefully this is all, wrapped up. The site is in its final conditions, whatever that may be, but we're getting close to knowing what those would look like.
Next one question. Melissa, do you know, is there a ballpark? And I know it's tough to say, but as we're going into the budget season, it would be good to know what we're looking at six figures, seven figures?
I
You know?
think preliminarily, the goal is that, and it seems the opinion of DEP that this will not turn into a landfill closure. So this is not going to be a cap situation, which is huge, both in a time, kind of monitoring perspective, cost perspective. This wouldn't require ongoing monitoring like some of the other landfills would, not a specialized cap. The goal right now is, it seems plausible that the preferred route is to kind of take off the superficial debris, get as much out as we can, and essentially kind of just loam and seed on top, and take out all of what is the public safety concern. Thankfully all the testing came back that we did have some asbestos containing materials, but there wasn't any hazardous materials that would trigger any sort of notification or further cleanup plan. So it really just is solid waste. It's metal, it's just old shingles, roofing materials, kind of what you would see from this type of area. So preliminarily, in thinking of just taking off that top layer, I think the numbers that I've heard is kind of maybe on the lower end of the 800,000 and upwards. And that is also dependent on the area that we end up being able to use as well and clean up. So if we do the abutters, it might be slightly more depending on what we find, but I think in that 800 to $1 million is probably a safe bet to start planning on.
Now, thank you. I think it's important for us to, obviously, I was hoping it was going to be much lower than that, but,
Yeah.
I think as we move forward, that's going to have a huge impact on where we go and what we do with the budget. So thank you.
Yep. And right now, one thing I did not mention is that there's for the MVP, the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program, there's kind of like a request for proposal. So it's kind of before their bid opens, you submit a form and see if this project might be viable. So it's something I've talked with our coordinator for Central Mass previously, and that I'm working on kind of submitting this request to see if maybe we could get some funding relief from that MVP program. That round opens typically in March. I think it's just going to be the timeline of events. If we have the design ready by the time we need to submit the grant, would be the real question. So if we can get that ready as soon as possible, then I think we have a better chance of being able to find grant funding to be used in FY 24.
Thank you. And thank you for staying on top of this.
So Melissa, what we're going to do, well, let's see if everybody's got questions on each thing you talk about, right? So questions on this one, right there.
So the anticipated cost is low 800,000. There's not any anticipated further monitoring after that. Is the low 800s to get us through another phase, and there's another phase where
That would be the cleanup, end of story.
Clean up, cover it up, and be done.
and the issue is that part of it is on town property and part of it is on the abutting property.
So the majority of the farm dump area is on the town-owned portion. There's a small, maybe not even 1 acre, the fringe of it that may extend onto the abutting property. So we did test pits right at the property line, and there was some debris, that was kind of like 6 feet under, very sporadic. So we're more just making sure that it doesn't extend any further, so the best case scenario was we wouldn't find anything on the abutting property, and we know where the dump ends. But right now that's still kind of unknown, because we did find that kind of debris very close to the property line, and kind of indicative that it did spread, because this all used to be one common property. So this is kind of inherited by both, us and the adjacent landowner from Ray Davis, who used to manage the property.
Melissa, I won't hold you to that number. I appreciate you giving us a ballpark of an idea, at least where we can start from. So thank you.
Yeah. Please don't hold me to it, but I think that's at least what I've gotten from TRC is the preliminary, best case scenario. This would probably be the least amount.
No questions. Looks good. Thank you, Melissa.
All right, so we're done with that. Melissa, thank you for that.
So the other item I had is kind of just briefly about budget and then kind of community gardens. So we did, just for your kind of knowledge, put in an extra 5,000 in our stewardship line item. And this is mostly what comes out of the self-assessment for the ADA study and conversations I've had with the ADA committee. So this is mostly just, there's kind of some changes that would need to be done to the parking lot to have compliant parking spaces, access into the community gardens, and also kind of the raised garden beds. So the community gardens currently is funded kind of by a revolving account. The fees for the plots gets used for everything, utilities that happen at the garden. So it pays the water bill, it pays, the hoses, if we need to till the soil, if we need to bring in soil in, and that is usually pretty consistent throughout the years. So there isn't too much flexibility within that account to kind of do these larger improvements. And within the stewardship line item, we are currently looking to replace the current shed that is there now. The stewardship committee has a need for a place to store their tools and equipment, now that they're doing a little bit more hands-on work there. And so when they asked the Conservation Commission, what kind of shed, would this be okay? Where's the location? The commission was pretty solid on that. They don't kind of want sheds kind of throughout the property. They want to keep them very consolidated. And so to either replace the existing one or kind of do an addition to it. So we've kind of done a little assessment of the shed. It is older. It's kind of falling apart. It's kind of flooded a few times this summer because the water line is inside the shed. So they're working on replacing the shed in the hole. So that kind of cost added with the ADA, we've asked for a little bit more to kind of cover both of those, but the shed should be this fiscal year. And the ADA aspect is for next year. That's all I have for that one.
Nope.
All right, so we're okay with that one.
Perfect. The next one is for town meeting. The commission has been working on our stormwater management bylaw and regulations and updating those. So we plan to we're just finalizing the very minimal changes to the bylaw. We did a lot of time spending updating the regulations to make sure that our rainfall amounts are kind of consistent with today's standards, and also helping to better kind of alleviate the hardships for some of those smaller lots in town that are pre-existing. So right now, our stormwater bylaw, it's a threshold of if you disturb 50%, you need a stormwater bylaw. We have even half-acre lots where if they want to do an addition, they pretty quickly meet that 50%. So we're amending our bylaw to be pretty consistent with the EPA standards of 1 acre disturbance total. And we're also kind of closing the loophole on some of those A&R lots that previously have not required stormwater management permits that now will, just to capture kind of what we call the common development. So if it's kind of 3 house lots being developed by the same developer, or even if they were kind of split by the same person, those 3 individual properties would then need a stormwater management permit, because through all 3, they will cumulatively alter up to 1 acre. So we're just kind of being a little bit more consistent with federal and state standards, and hoping that we can kind of close any remaining gaps. And I think we're bringing us up to standards. We had Park Corporation, I think last year or the year before, come in with some recommendations to our regulations that we updated to be compliant with our MS4 permit. So we will be totally up to date, and hopefully won't have to do it for a little while, but we're excited to almost be done and have that on the town meeting warrant for next year.
You're talking about it's going to be on this March?
Yeah.
23.
Yep. So we're just about.
So you think you're almost done as far as the work goes?
Yep. Yeah, we've done the work in the regulations. So ironically, we kind of moved backwards and did the hard part within the regulations, and then the very minor kind of changes that then come into the bylaw. We're just tweaking that and just doing the final formatting. It's just one of those bylaws that I think has gone through too many people. So the Word document we have is a little sketchy. So we're working on just making sure that everything is formatted correctly.
One question, Melissa. So you may not know the answer to this. When was the last time there was an update to stormwater bylaw? And again, I appreciate you guys incorporating everything and taking the time and getting us to where we need to be. But I can't even remember when the last time there was a change.
I think the stormwater bylaw itself has probably not been updated since 2008 when it was enacted, but the regulations have been kind of consistently updated, probably at least every 5 years from what I saw on we had kind of have a revisions section. So we did kind of a minor update 2 years ago. And then I think the last one before that was 2015. I think they were looking at fees and some other issues, but it didn't really change the intent of the bylaw. Not that we are now, but the thresholds were kind of making a little bit more relevant.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Yeah, I followed these conversations at Concom. I think this is an important thing to get done, so I appreciate the effort that they've done.
So bylaws gotta be approved by town meeting regulations? No? So the council will do that.
Yeah, so our regulations just need to be approved at a regular meeting of the Conservation Commission. You know, now that we have the bylaw, it will be posted for 2 weeks prior before we take that vote, but the bylaw needs the town meeting vote.
Melissa, I have a quick question for you that I'm hoping you look confused about. So is this bylaw that you're looking to, and you have a placeholder, you and I have chatted about this. Planning boards asked for a placeholder to amend town bylaws to include a new chapter on environmental controls. Is this the same thing, or is this something completely different? And if it's something completely different, are you aware of this or working with planning on this?
I am not aware of it, so I'm assuming that it's not the same. This is our erosion and stormwater control bylaw, so I'll take a look at what planning's proposing, but I'm not aware of it.
That's for a placeholder and the intent appeared to be the same, but as you're talking about it, I'm getting.
I can't remember, is this part of the zoning bylaw, so it needs 2/3, or should we separate it?
It is. It is
Somewhere
part of the
else?
zoning. Yeah, it is part of the zoning bylaw. That is one thing that the commission is looking to do, is move it out of the zoning bylaw as well. Because right now appeals go to the zoning board of appeals, and that doesn't necessarily make sense. So that is something that we will probably have to change as well.
How do we move that out? Does that require a 2/3 vote to change the zoning bylaw to move that, or question for town council maybe?
Those town
I think that's
council.
where- That's where it belongs, I think. I agree.
I think you're voting on a zoning bylaw to change it. It's gonna take the 2/3 to take it out.
So Melissa, does this need to go before planning board for hearings because it's a zoning change?
If it's, yeah, it might be. I'll have to check that.
The town council would find, I
Yeah.
guess. We may be able to remove it with a 2/3
Right.
vote and then the majority to put it someplace else.
Yeah, Melissa, if you can just send me a requisite email, I'll look more for Jay and getting an answer on that.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Melissa, is that it?
I also want to thank the board for the admin support hours that you put in the budget last year. We filled the position with Laura Davis. She has been phenomenal. She's quickly stepped in. She's doing ZBA and conservation. She has surpassed our hopes and dreams. She's really stepped into her role. And we want to just give her a quick shout out and thanks to the board as well. It has been huge relief for me as well. I've started to be able to pick up some more of the technical work and focus on some of the open space aspects. So I think this will be a huge positive change. And we're already kind of reaping the benefits, but we'll continue in the future.
How many hours?
She's 19 total, so 12 for Concom and 7 or 7.5 for ZBA.
Only took us 2 or 3 years to get that done, so glad to get to the finish line with it.
We picked a winner, so that helps.
Good.
That's all I have for tonight.
Anything else from Melissa?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Great
Thank
report.
you. Have a great night.
Good work.
Thank you.
Okay, chairs reports. I actually got quite a bit tonight, so I'll as fast as I can. So I guess I'll start off with the worst one. As everyone knows, we have recently finished the downtown paving project, right? And the last piece of it was done the day before Thanksgiving. And I'll just put the word, it's actually there, unfortunately. So we had a meeting last week at the public safety building. It was both chiefs, it was me, and then several business people from downtown. They asked for it, so we agreed. And we had quite a while, it's probably an hour and a half or so. So I'll break it down in 3 parts. So I started off with Betty. They were just flabbergasted that no one bothered to talk to them about the timing of this last piece of paving. In some cases, the day before Thanksgiving is a really busy day as far as their business goes. So several businesses got hurt because of the timing of the paving. They shut off Boston Road down to by Bagley, so Californians didn't get any gas business for 3 hours. And that's the day before Thanksgiving. So anyway, these guys were all very pleasant but very pointed in their points. Okay, so you know, I said, nothing we can do. I can't change what happened. I'm sorry. I wish that, you know, I know talk's cheap. I'm sorry. I said, we've got another piece to go. We still got railroad tracks. And so we will learn from this and make sure that the next time you are well advised and actually to input. You know, everybody hates railroad, right? I mean, we all hate it. It's always, it's got to be done, but you can still do it in a way that takes into account you know, businesses so that you really don't hurt them any more than you have to. So that was the first part. The second part was basically criticizing the actual work itself. So it doesn't appear that much of an effort was made to meet with those businesses to describe what was going to be done. They seem to be kind of surprised about how it turned out. The 2 cutouts that were come out, the way spaces were done, etc. So they had quite pointed criticisms of the actual engineering. And I mean, talked about curve, it should have been 90 degrees, it should have been angled, I don't know. So I think what we probably need to do when the new superintendent is in place is ask him to have the engineering of that piece of it reviewed, just to make sure there's not anything else that should be done. Ms. Bradshaw called today and she got a phone call from someone who I guess bicycle had trouble with a piece of it. I know there's some concern about the barbershop as far as how that's engineered. The Morrow's Cafe people said it's really dangerous pulling out of Morrow's Cafe now. You've got to really lean out to see what's coming because the way that cutout is done. So they're afraid there's going to be a wreck with people pulling up too far to see what's coming and someone can fly down the hill to pass and kick stuff. So anyway, long story short, we probably ought to have the actual engineering of that piece of it reviewed to make sure that it's sound and there's nothing that should be done to improve some of the things that was described. Okay. Third thing is start looking forward, and we just talked about this as climate downtown, etc. I mentioned the National Grid parcel. I said there is some desire on the select board to acquire the National Grid parcel to possibly turn it into some type of wastewater treatment plant, maybe paving on top of it, etc. And I said, with that, would you guys want to have more parking? They would be like, yeah. And it was a famous, you know, yes, we would like more parking. But they said, by far, the wastewater treatment plant is what we need to focus on. One of the business owners who's been in town, he's been in town for decades, said, I just want you to know that when people ask me, tell them not to open the businesses out there, that it's just the business climate is not good and infrastructure is not good. So I encourage them not to do it. So that was the most depressing part of the whole thing. So they this one says they've got to do something every 18 days. And it's $800 per ton. So you know, we know we're well aware of the problem here, but you know, we keep talking about this. So we probably need to really roll up our sleeves and try to really look at this and see what we can do so that we end up hopefully with people wanting to come back downtown and open their businesses. So that was the gist of it. Chief Noel was there, Chief Close were there, and they did their best, but it really was like with that. It's just coming toward. They did their jobs. Ryan got to the detail people down there to direct people that day, show them where to park, but it just didn't seem to do much good. Marlo's lost a whole lot of business in the morning. Companies lost all their business. Barber said that he lost several clients that couldn't get in because they're over and they need to pull up right in front and couldn't. So anyway, it wasn't a I didn't leave there very. So there's that. So I think we've really got some work to do next year as far as really thinking about what we can do to improve things. Okay.
I just say thank you for meeting with them, the chiefs as well, and at least getting the issues on the table.
You're welcome. Okay, so yesterday we had 2 interesting things. Mark, is that both of them. So we started off at 1 o'clock with a meeting with the Dale EMC people who are in the process of starting to market their property. They're gone. Dale is not coming back to Southborough. So we met with Paul Fitzgerald, who's basically in charge of sounds like real estate for Dale Worldwide. He used to be EMC. He's part of the Egan family, but it looks like he's gotten the job with the Hodel Corporation. So they had CBRE is going to do the marketing. So they had that person on the Zoom. Karina was there, Mark was there, I was there, and Mommy Houlihan from Pennybrook was there. So that was who was there from South. And Lori Little, yeah, Lori's there too. So that's who was there from our side. So the main thing they wanted us to know is there's a big piece of their land, about 30 acres that is residential, that's down to the back of it. And they were trying to kind of gauge the appetite for supporting someone coming in and trying to do it fully. So their intention is to market the parcels into two parts. They're going to market commercial and they're going to market the residential. So they want to separate it out. They think they can probably maximize the proceeds if they do it that way. But they really wanted to know, you know, obviously what's going to commit to F4B because we can't, right? But they wanted to see, you know, kind of how we reacted to that part of it. They showed us a plot plan that showed how they could end up with a road off Crystal Pond that would go right into it. So it wouldn't hook right onto Route 9, which probably helps. And Marty was on this call too, so she got to listen to this. That was, they know, you know, we discussed the one that's on the table right now, Men's Housing. I didn't say, I wish, you know, we heard about this the year before, but you know, we were thinking. So anyway, that they're going to start the marketing of the commercial piece of it on the 15th of December. They've got their brochures and their everything. So that's going to happen. They are going to eventually, when they get down and have some interest in it, they're going to basically let the buyer there know that they're going to require an easement out of commercial property, which is where this road would have to go to the 40B. Okay, so that really was the purpose. That was just to kind of gauge what we thought about 40B. Right, they did the numbers. They knew about the 200. They knew where the words were. So they've done a lot of work to that up. So then once that meeting ended, Paul Fitzgerald stayed on the Zoom. Oh, that's right. Okay, so I stayed on because I've been asking him about the tower. And I've been asking about this for years. You know, do we have an agreement to be on the tower? The answer is no. So we now know we don't. So we're there at the goodness of their hearts. EMC does own the tower. American Tower manages it. American Tower is the biggest tower owned by far in this country, but they don't own that tower. They manage it for EMC. It's, as he said, it's a cash cow because you don't have complaining tenants, you know. You don't have to do a lot. They don't mess things up. It's been a cash cow. You know, they didn't buy it because of it, but they got it. And so they're going to sell the tower with park. And so, Mr. Fitzgerald has promised it before, so we will have an agreement in place, show that we have a right to be on it. Doesn't mean that the new buyer won't make us renegotiate an agreement and maybe who knows what that agreement might say. So right now we don't pay anything, but there we have no legal right to do this. Nothing to say. So he's working with a couple of people in the fire department. I'm not sure who right now to get a list of equipment that's on there. So they're working on that agreement. So we should have an agreement soon that basically memorializes our right to be in the town. Okay, Chief Achilles is where they're well aware of this too. So that part was good. Okay, I'm going to wait on the regional dispatch update because it basically is part of what we're going to do when we get down to talking about regional dispatch as far as next steps go. The two go hand in hand. So I'm going to skip that one for a moment, do all that together. Not much to update on Hopkinton water meeting, except that once we had a meeting yesterday too, as one with the other 3 towns that are right now in the group for regional dispatch, right? Hopkinton, Westboro, Grafton. So after that meeting was over with, then Hopkinton stayed on that with Mark and I. And then, so we tried to talk about getting the meeting set. It's still not set, but the town manager, Norman, understands he needs to get the meeting set. So it falls in his court to propose some dates to meet the Hopkinton.
They just sent over some proposed dates, so you may not have seen that.
Didn't know. Okay, good. So that's the next step on that one is to get the date set for that meeting. Okay,
Yeah.
so go ahead.
Follow-up question. Do you anticipate are those dates in December or?
Yes, I asked for it to be December before the 20th. I explained so the select board chair was on the meeting too, so I explained, our town meeting is March 25th, it's gonna be your fast. Theirs is not till May. So I said, you really gotta, move pretty fast if you, really wanna get what needs to be on the warrant on March 25th. So I think they understood, so it sounds like we got dates.
Yes.
And so it sounds like a message.
And is this to communicate the points that we came up with in our last meeting, or is it those already have been communicated? This is true.
The former.
Thank you.
And the chair hasn't seen that meeting, so because she basically said, so she hadn't seen it yet, so whether she'll see it or not before, because she did watch our regional dispatch meeting, and thought that was interested, and so we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but she watched that one, she didn't see the one that for water, but my guess is she will before the action meeting. Okay, next thing is I'm just gonna update everyone on DPW projects. Remember that one of my goals this year was to basically help improve the communications from the department. Well, that's kind of not gonna happen now, right? So I at least tried to keep up with all the different projects and where they stand. Because I think that will help us when we get down to the last matter tonight, which Ms. Braccio is going to accuse herself from, where we talk about possibly appointing and replacing. The two can go ahead and go. So I want everybody to understand how much is on the table, because I think it will help inform the decision later on as far as what you're going to do. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, ready?
Okay, I'm giving you a suspense.
All right, so I'm gonna start with the ones that are done. We've got several. Mark, feel free to chime in here. Okay, so North Rural Road culvert is done. The guardrail went in on Monday. It's done. So last step is to write Jamie over that and basically bless it, because we had state ARPA monies that paid the part. But it's done.
I now have nothing under my report, so.
Sorry.
Good work.
Now, when it's gonna open, I don't know. When they really going to say, but
Drivable.
So one, so, all right,
here it goes.
I'll jump in. So, there is substantial completion on Millboro Road. We wanted to try to do something with Senator Eldridge's office to kind of recognize the state ARPA's contribution to the funding of the project. Senator is away on business this week. Will not be back until next week. We're trying to set something up, and so don't wait for me. Get it open when you can, and we can work on something when he gets back. So I'm working with Ms. Gallagher just to determine as soon as we can open it, we will open it. And our office will flood social media and make sure that people are well aware that it's open. As soon as one person knows and people see people using it, it'll be widely used. But I know that Ms. Stanza, Ms. Gallagher have gone down and inspect the work, and they're pleased with the work that's been done. So I think we're in good shape, and as soon as we can get everything physically moved, we'll have that.
How many years has it been?
5.
Are you sure it's not more than that? I remember you talking about this a long time ago.
I believe, well, we've been talking about that culvert height for a long time, and I will give Ms. Gallagher credit, because we were looking for a place that when we had the staff in-house and the expertise to do it in-house.
Yeah.
And somebody had the bright idea, I believe it was Ms. Gallagher, to go and put a steel plate over it and pave over it. No harm, no foul. And that steel plate lasted for 4 years until it finally started to collapse. And that was when we had to do something that closed the room. So the issue has existed for at least 5 years.
Within budget.
Within budget. Yes.
We got a ribbon cutting.
What's that?
Yeah.
Cider and
We can do something for historical, pictures and everything, so when we get to that point, but I think it's more important at this point that we do. And then we'll worry about it.
All right, next is Newton Street. Which I missed. I'm still looking at it again. Okay, so that was done too. That's the new water pipe that goes the link to Newton Street. Remember, the water, the pressure was horrible, water was yellow, and also that's totally done. Water pipes in, everything seems to be working fine and great. The only thing left to be done is possibly repaving the road after the settles next year. So it's done. The pipe is in, it's working. So the actual substance of the project is done. So check that one out too. Okay. The next one is one to talk about Main Street. So paving's done for the year. It's my understanding they've gone back now and, fixed in front of Marlowe's Cafe, that lip, that caused the person to trip and fall. So that apparently looks good. I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's gone down there. You go.
I thought it looked nice. I thought, it was interesting because Ms. Gallagher had showed me some pictures of before the project even started. And a lot of the things that, have been corrected as part of this project were existing back then. Before the sidewalks were in place and that, so, I understand the issues, I understand the timing. I will point out that, Sean Morrow and I now text each other. I have his cell phone, he has mine. And, the past several months, we've been, communicating back and forth about some of the issues as well as, trying to give him good ideas on the timing. But unfortunately, as we get closer to the end of paving season, getting the paver out here becomes more challenging. And it's like, okay, we're coming. Just wanted to let you know, type of thing. So we've tried to be as responsive as we can. So.
Any CSX news?
News is that the engineering's done, and you just want CSX to basically say, go. We gotta pay for it, we gotta make sure it's still money, when we look at the road money, so we gotta make sure that that's still set aside, make sure the superintendent knows about that. But,
CSX controls the whole process except for paying for it. And we're all set to pay for it, but they control the process, the contract, everything, bidding. So, I don't even know if they bid it.
I don't think, no.
No.
So that's really to be done. I'm trying to do the ones done first. Okay, that's three that's done. The tree removal contract, is basically, Stumpy's is doing it. We're just waiting for Stumpy's to get us on the list. Any more news on that one?
We've signed the agreement, we've sent them the list, they have the list. The problem is they also have the list of the other communities in the bid consortium who've already, signed the work, so. We're just gonna try to push them.
So
And just-
one thing to keep in mind
Yes.
is one of the concerns with planning board we had was doing it in the spring. We wanted to have it done in the fall through the winter
Mhm.
because of maybe
Nesting birds.
nesting birds and
Yeah.
all of that, right? So I think we need to let Stumpy's know that we're a little under the gun on this.
Right.
If they want to be able to fulfill the contract,
Right.
that's all.
Is this work that can happen during the winter?
Sure,
Yep.
preferably even.
Yeah, as long as weather permits,
Yeah.
it's not a temperature dependent thing.
Nope.
I think the only problem, and even rain's not an issue, it's wind. They can't get up in the buckets if it's too windy.
So can you push this and let us know, because we all are concerned? This is one we're all getting phone calls on about specific trees, people who know us, want to know where the tree is on that list.
I think it's gonna get worse once it starts, it's in like there's one done, two done, but I think.
I think this is one though that we need to make sure we over communicate is happening when it's happening. So that way we reduce
Absolutely.
the phone calls.
So we've got to make sure the communication
Yeah.
on their end.
Yeah.
Exactly,
I just want to make sure the public's aware that,
I agree,
and the process is followed and make sure it's clear on the website.
because there's a good amount of time that's happened between
Right.
the trees being approved to be removed.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the trees actually being.
Right, next one is the annual paving contract, where Calco approved so many streets, with about, I think, 1.3 million or so costs. That contract is being posted to the central register on the 7th of December, so tomorrow. And bids are supposed to be back by 12/21.
Correct.
Okay. Obviously, that won't get done this spring, but at least we'll have a teed up, ready to go when it's the weather turns. Okay, let's see, Parkerville Road. So we got the permission from the state so we're out of the regulations. We now have the right to set the speed limit appropriately. So that's gonna be on the 12/20 agenda. Okay, so we'll knock that one out and check it off.
Parkerville North,
Yeah.
Yes.
we've had questions now about Parkerville South.
Yes, we have.
too. So,
So this,
It took us a long time to get it. And I think you had, one of my updates, I had sent you the explanation as to what the comment that came back from MassDOT is why this was taking so long.
Yeah.
Is because, the city of Boston was looking to do something which may have affected the Mass General law that governs these SSRs.
Yeah.
And so that kind of moves things up. Just a straight. This is something that came up, in the spring or summer.
we did at the May 31st.
Yeah.
meeting. I
I
thought it
think
was
that's pretty good.
I agree.
By state standards, it's
Yeah.
pretty great, but the residents,
Yep.
looking for.
6 months for something that's so simple.
Is the same situation on Carterville South? Does the state set that limit too in the south as well? I can't.
I'd have to go back, Sam, and take a look at the SSR,
Interesting,
but I think it because the language that I looked at, and the board will have to execute the new SSR. So basically, the SSR just cuts out that piece
Yeah.
of Parkerville North from the speed regulation, allowing you to set
Yeah.
a different speed limit.
So we asked.
And that's all you ask for. So
Right.
I believe that, I'm not sure how that's gonna go over if you're like, yeah, okay, so now we take another piece
Yeah.
of the same SSR and cut that out too.
Never hurts to ask.
That may have, well, I guess it depends on how it breaks up the whole speed regulation.
Yeah.
To begin with, or whether we just approve for the whole thing.
We had a conversation that night. Chelsea was involved in that with Parkerville South. And I'm not sure we had our facts right because since then Sam and I at the transfer station one day, there's a gentleman that came in that lives there and he basically told us very nicely how dangerous that piece of it is. And I'm not sure we had our facts right as far as the speed limit is there. So maybe that's another one to deal with, but this is only Parkerville North.
Yeah, let's do what we can here.
Yeah, there's so many roads we have probably to pass, that's just one. Okay, so that's the list of things that are done, okay? Then, so this is what's pending, Portable Road South, big project, so totally pending at this point, 25% design, long way to go to bring to fruition. The Pocket Park, as we know, so got work to be done on that one. The Porterville North, which is the piece in front of the public safety building. That's where she did the change order for each Perkins, and we didn't do Deerfoot and Flag, so that's gonna be done. So I assume each Perkins is gonna go to do that one, so that's not done.
I'm sorry, could you just, because I'm very fast,
Sorry.
change order so that.
She did a change, so remember the EH Perkins, about $2,800, right? The
Yep,
previous ones, right?
Yep.
Deerfoot and Flag were
Yep.
taken off, right? They substituted Portable in front of the public safety building down to the causeway. Where it's kind of messed up where the work for the building when it took place, so it's rough down there, so they're gonna do that instead. They just haven't started, so that will be done in the spring, which is why they were willing, remember when she was here, the last time she was here, she said that's why they were willing to continue work on the park. At one point we thought they were gone, right? We were gonna start all over if we didn't get it done before December. That wasn't true. She said, no, they're coming back for that anyway, so they will do some of the park. Okay, so we still have a live contract with Perkins. It has money left in it. Okay, so we definitely need to make sure, everybody's got their arms around that piece of it. Okay, the TIP project, the state TIP project still has a punch list to deal with. And we all know what one of them is, which is the bump that comes into the building here. The wall on School Street that was too tall and then Karen cut down to do it, so that's gonna be dealt with. So I'm sure there's more on besides those two, but we know those two. So Mark is working with Karen to try to figure out what the time is for the state to come in and do their purchase on their piece of the project. Okay, so to do, right? So to do list. New sidewalks. So we're going to talk about sidewalks in a minute when we get to the ARP discussion. But sidewalks, as Andrew was pointing out, take a while to get done. So that we really haven't started very much on. We've got ARPA money that has been recommended from the ARPA committee. So tonight we'll talk about whether we're ready to at least say, yes, we want this money for this. And then when capital comes on the 20th, we can start talking to them about how to get this process, what this process should be to identify the sidewalks that we think are the best to put in. We've got, there's a lot of work been done in the past, years ago. It's been a committee put together, so we've got a list of sidewalks. But that probably should be refreshed when people have a chance to weigh in again, I know my neighborhood wants to weigh in. So sidewalks, to come. So that's it as far as what might be on the, interim new persons list when they hit the door.
How about the new TIP project?
Oh, that's actually
Marlboro.
new too, Sam. I actually did put that on here. Yes, a new TIP project, the Marlboro Road TIP project.
Yeah.
That Karen, it's approved. We've got approved, but nothing's been done.
Right.
To start talking about doing. So it goes from the intersection of, I guess it's Framingham and Marlboro Road, right? All the way into,
Marlboro all the way to
so into Marlboro.
the Marlboro town line, I thought.
Marlboro just redid their roads up to
Yeah,
that.
to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who's right or wrong. I think it starts at the intersection of those two, but I could be wrong too. But anyway, there is a approved TIF project that we've done nothing with whatsoever. So, there's that.
That's a great one because that gives us potential to get a pedestrian or bikeway sort of east-west there. Which is great. You can only get across the causeway.
All right, so there's that. Okay, Sam, you're gonna do the estimate update?
Now. Thanks. Just a quick update on Assabet. Algonquin does an outstanding job, but there is another alternative for high school, and it is the Assabet Valley Regional Technical High School that I think a lot of people don't have a very good understanding of. We are one of 7 towns that are the primary areas for Assabet. We have about 1,000 students. Great programs. They've got all the usual academic kind of things, but a variety of other vocational programs such as automotive, manufacturing, biotech, culinary arts, hospitality, computer programming, web development, plumbing, metal fabrication, carpentry, cosmetology, HVAC, electrical wiring, all places where there are great jobs out there. And they have a showcase event each year, and this year it is this coming Thursday, the 8th at 6 p.m. at Assabet, which is up near Marlboro, near Walmart up there on Route 85. Great opportunity if folks are interested in seeing, learning more about Assabet. Can certainly go to that. You can check the website. It's again an opportunity for students who are looking for more vocational kind of things locally. And we have a portion of the seats in that program. It's actually turns out to be moderately competitive now, which is interesting. But again, great thing to look at, and hopefully people will be aware of it as they're making choices about where they want to have children go to high school. So a great resource, and I encourage people to check it out.
Can I make a pitch? For Assabet as well. Tomorrow, there is on 12/7 from 9 to 12, it's an all-you-can-eat breakfast buffet. By the way, if anybody's interested, it includes omelets, made to order, potatoes, Belgian waffles, toppings, pastries, and breakfast meat. It's great. This was posted online by a mom whose son goes there. So it ties in. In the Epicurean room at Assabet.
And that's,
So
they have a culinary program, and they have meal service periodically there too, which is
amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tomorrow morning, there's a breakfast buffet. So just.
We've
tied in
actually
Sam's
used
food.
Assabet to cater some
Cater
events,
things.
at Senior Center.
Senior Center, it's
Yeah, They
fabulous.
do a nice job. Very nice
Fabulous.
job.
It's a great resource.
And a great breakfast tomorrow.
Okay, so Mark, I see, I really did still this under on that. Okay, so we're gonna.
Just trying to keep the train moving.
And we're gonna wait until we get down to 22, because we
Yep.
probably twice. Okay, so we're gonna wait on that. Okay. Consent agenda, we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Okay, anybody want to hold A?
Okay, before we, so. The update on the superintendent search.
I can't.
She can, so we can do it at the end where we talk about the process. We're just gonna do the two things together, so Lisa doesn't have to get up.
I'm just gonna leave. So.
Okay, so we're gonna hold A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H,
Hold.
I, O. So we're holding A, H, and I. Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve B through T.
So much. You made the motion? Sorry.
Okay, so I made the motion, Chelsea seconded. Same with Lisa.
Sorry.
So we made a motion to approve B through G. So don't. Okay,
Okay.
so all in favor of B through G.
Sorry.
5-0. Okay, so now A, Sam, you have A, which is
Yeah.
minutes.
I've got something for all of these, I guess, mostly Scrivener's kind of things, but
Anybody else have anything besides Sam? Minutes?
Just a little stop.
Right, so Sam, got 4 sets. of minutes.
11-1, line 84. I think it should be residents who purchase electricity from National Grid will see 300% price increase starting November It's a 30% price increase. I'm not sure where that number came from. The town said the town will see a 30%, but it's not the town actually.
So you wanted to say,
Residents who purchase electricity from National Grid will see a 300% price increase starting November 1. That was why we sent the postcard around these.
Okay.
And that's it for me for that one. 11:15. Several small ones. Line 99, PWPB, letter you reversed in it. Line 125, 126, 130, and 131, Mr. Boland's name is spelled 2 L's. Line 135, Martell doesn't have 2 L's on it. Her name is Marcy Jones. MARCI, Jones. And line 174, Jones again. And line 225, Mr. Perry's name is misspelled Parry. That's it for me for 11:15.
I have one on 11:1. I don't remember you catching it from line 51. It's a wind glad field. I think it's one.
Yeah. Partner level demos.
Yep.
Partner level. Yeah. Okay, 11:16.
so that's it for one, that's it for 15, now on 16.
No. 11:16, line 2, the date should be Wednesday, November 16, I think.
Yeah, that's it, Wednesday.
And then that's it for me, 11:21. Line 116, Mr. Jenks' name is spelled JENKS.
Yep.
That's it for me, all small things. Bridget did a great job as usual.
Andrew,
And on 11:21, line 122. Says interim DWP superintendent, instead of DPW.
is that it? So I was gonna make a motion to approve all 4 sets of minutes as amended.
Second,
On favor? All right, all right, H, so Andrew,
Yes, I had a question about, it. So I understand that the increase in the spending cap on the revolving fund is to enable the expenditure for the T-Box. So, and there were 2 absurdly different bids. Yes. Right. And one of them was, the low bid was 86,508. So in the second to last sentence in the memo, or the third, to last, so the bid cannot be awarded until there's sufficient funding available to pay. If we're the increase in the spending cap is, it's a good healthy amount above the lowest bid. Could you put out the bid, see what the bids come in at, and then increase the spending cap to enable you to award the bid to the lowest bidder? I just,
So you want
is
to
the
wait?
concern
Yes,
there that?
you absolutely can.
Okay.
You can wait to see. The only reason I kept it on here is because advisory is committed to take this up at the meeting on the 14th. And right now they're on a razor thin majority. They need pretty much everybody to show up in order to, so if they're able to get a meeting, I'd love to get them to take care of doing something with the cap. I know that this board's a little more regular. And we can handle it at that time. I do want to point out one thing, because I did go back and look, and I think some of us were under the assumption that the current cap is 30. Current cap is 75. It was increased at the last town meeting and it was passed on the consent list vote. So I went back and I was updating the warrant for 23 for next year. I went to update the number was 75. I went back and looked at the vote, it was on the consent list, so. A number of people had said to me, it's 30, and I said, it's not 30. So now that I went and took a look at it, so it is 75. I'm fine with waiting. If we want to wait, I still think I'm gonna push forward with advisory simply to get a vote on. To get their approval on the books, and then the board could adjust. Well, I'm gonna ask you then for the same thing, but if you'd like to wait, you absolutely.
But if we're gonna do it eventually, why?
I'm really just asking the question.
It's golf.
As far as what gets spent inside the revolving fund, yes, whoever.
The subject of-
Just like, although the number, make it bigger than you need to, because the only control you have is the total that you're saying to come out of it, so.
But you do control the revolving fund with the bylaw, which does specify exactly what you can spend the money on. So that is where the control is now with the bylaw, because it said, here's what funds you can have. And here's what you can do with the fund, and the way we set up this golf revolving fund is any money received can only be put back into.
And I think it's a good chance that we will get a acceptable bid in the spring, at least according to the architect who works with these folks. And the pressure was to get it done quickly here, which Jack Price said.
Just moving forward, so the board is aware, as part of the paving bid that is out that the chair referenced earlier. We do have in there pricing to do John Wilson Drive as well as the golf parking lot. And the intention is to carve that piece out, and I'll work with Mr. Valentine so that we can make it part of a bond. So that we can then, pay off that bond with receipts from the golf revolving fund. Now that is probably going to hamstring us for a couple of years, depending on how many years we do that. So just want to give you a heads up. That is the intention. That's the number one. I know we talked about irrigation, but that is the number one issue that I hear about more often from public safety and golf. So.
Andrew, you satisfied? Okay, so do we want to not do this, or do we want to do it?
Do it, yeah.
Okay, so a motion to approve the request to increase golf revolving fund spending limit to $100,000 from current 75.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, Chelsea, do you?
I'm just gonna abstain.
Okay. From the executive session.
Yeah, because I fell off.
Okay. All right, so there's nothing to do with it other than to approve it. So, motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes on November 21st.
Second.
Why are you not no?
No, Sam asked me about the question.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry.
So.
Okay, so let me do it again. So motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes from the 21st.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so 4-0-1. Chelsea is going to abstain from that. Okay, all right. All right, moving on. So can we put it up? So while she's doing that, and I sent everybody an email, so nothing's changed as far as the things that we could consider tonight. First thing is, we know that we did not approve the hazard premium pay, $3,000, but what we didn't do officially is decide where to put it. So we got two choices. That's not the right one. Okay, so you got, that's not the right spreadsheet. That 55 should be down there. So it's the one, this is the one that's on one line. Well, it should be, because I sent it to Melanie.
What's the bottom number?
Well, go up a little bit, Vanessa,
Scroll up.
please.
Down to the bottom.
All right, so it's probably right, except for maybe on that bottom. So the 50,000 for the, that was down at the bottom, that was for the senior center. You're taking, I mean, we're back up 400, so it's okay. We can still talk about this thing. Okay, so we've got a decision as to where we want to put the 300. We've got two viable choices, I think. And the reason I'm trying to do this tonight is so that we know what's in the tax relief bucket going into the budget season, right? So there's a method to madness here. Okay, so I think we can either put into that, if that's what you want to do, or we just like drop down to the bottom so that it's basically in unrestricted funds so that we can still put it back up if we want to. So I don't think it really matters because we always move it too. So do you want it to go into the real estate tax reduction bucket officially, or do you want it to drop down?
I'd like to see it there.
Real estate, okay, all right. Andrew Sam, you okay with that?
With what?
To put it into the, so Vanessa, now can you go back up a little bit? Move it up.
Vanessa, do you
No,
just
no,
want
no,
to share,
sorry,
do
Vanessa, the other one,
you want to share it on
So
the
move it down.
Zoom too?
And is this really, considering that we're anticipating another shift,
Yeah, absolutely,
14, 16.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I also think hearing that we may have breakdown.
Oh, really? I mean, every meeting we have, you know, we got dispatch where we're talking about adding, so we've had very little good news like, so.
What is the proposal? Put it where?
To put it into the, so Vanessa, can you go down more? Sorry to move you around this. Okay, so into the general property tax relief for residents bucket. So that 240 would go to 540.
I guess I'm okay with that, although I still think that, in my mind, that's not a final decision at this point. There are other things.
Yes. Is, you know, you know, that you've got something that would take down taxes 1.5 if it sits there.
Yeah.
Okay, so motion to basically move the hazard pay $3,000 to the general property tax relief for residents.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, the second one is, we don't have to do this tonight, but remember Karen believes that the tree removal
Yeah.
contract is gonna be 40,000 left.
Yeah.
So that 52, so Vanessa, can you go up just a little? Just a little. And truly, we would be proud to see the line saying up a little bit more. Okay, say stop. Okay, so see the 52,
Yeah.
so that probably should be 12, but we don't have to do that yet. We may want to wait till we actually truly have the
Yeah.
number in. I just know we may have another 40 right there.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
Plus you may vote on the trees. You
Yeah,
will vote on
yeah.
the trees.
Yeah, so just know that right now we think that's. Okay, so the next one is, National Grid. So, you've heard what I said tonight as far as what the downtown people want to consider. We know that we've been talking about this for a while. If we decide we want to take it off the ARPA list, and put that 252 down into the real estate, reduction bucket, it doesn't mean that we are going to never consider National Grid again. So, I'm with you. After what they said, but, I just don't know, I still think the timing is right on it. You know, we don't know much about the property, don't know how dirty it is, et cetera. We don't think National Grid is trying to sell it, so I don't think there's anybody out there competing with this, so.
Yeah.
I'm just not worried about that property going anyplace, so it might be that we've got a better use of 252 today. But that's just.
Well, I don't worry about the property going anywhere, but I mean, we've been waffling in downtown forever. And I actually do believe that doing something with wastewater there could open the door to drawing some new business and vitality there. So, I mean, it seems to me that finding a way, I don't know what it would cost to find out about the condition of that property, but
Yeah.
I'd be interested in figuring out, you know, for what, $10,000, 20, whatever the number is, can we get some testing done to find out what it is? Can we talk with National Grid? If in fact it is, there's hazardous material there, then that would be, I would think, even more incentive for them to bargain on a better price. If we could find a way to take on the responsibility somehow and figure out if there's something we could do with it. For example, I have heard anecdotally that towns do buy those kind of parcels at capital and do it for parking or build a building on it or whatever, and not have to worry about the hazmat liability. So maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but to know more, I think would be useful at this point, as opposed to sitting on it for another 5 years. Continuing to see the same kind of problem with pressures. My bias is to do something, which to sit.
So can I ask Mark a question? So the 20, if a 21E is done, is it National Grid's responsibility to do that, or is it the town's responsibility
So
typically?
the town can request for it to be done, but National Grid's got to agree. Because it's their property.
Right,
and so, I mean,
I'm all for having that done, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean,
Let me
this-
just say that,
yeah,
I'm all for having that done.
historically, you know, when I've been involved with 20 of these from town.
Yeah.
And it's been on property that we're interested in or curious in everything in that, it's been the town that's been the responsible party to
Yes,
do
okay.
that. But you need the access agreement with the property owner to be able to do that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that whose responsibility it would or should.
And.
We have a lot of agreements are done subject to, due diligence, right?
Yeah.
Execute agreement, you got due diligence, and a lot of times the buyer asks the seller to furnish a 21E, at least a phase one,
Yeah.
21E, right?
Yeah.
So there's different ways to do this, but if the preference of the select board is to at least spend $10,000 or 252 now. Because I am never gonna approve, I'm never gonna support doing that unless we know what's. gonna be,
Great.
I don't want to break neck now.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually ran into some time ago, several years ago now, a gentleman who used to work for, I guess, Mass Electric at that point, and told me that there was a small transformer
Yeah.
station back there somewhere, which did not have a very big footprint on it, that actually exploded one night and created a fireball and a lot of excitement. And clearly that event could have certainly created release of, transformer fluids or whatever, but not good things in there. But his comment was that they use a very small portion of that property. It'd be very helpful to know if that was the only piece
Yeah.
there, and Grid ought to be able to tell us where that was. To do some testing, or they maybe had other records that showed, oh, we had storage, all sorts of crazy things all over the place, et cetera. But to know, I think would be hugely helpful as far as what we want to do next.
And I think too, I've heard over the years of there being an underground stream, Stony Brook Stream or whatever that runs through downtown that might run through that parcel. I think as we move forward, that might be useful information to have, because I don't know if that may or may not affect the wastewater. Hopefully it wouldn't, but it might just be good to know in case we don't run into another.
That probably wouldn't affect wastewater because you would build a wastewater treatment facility, on top of the
Right.
ground. And you might have a leaching field there that probably again would not be particularly deep, but anyway, knowing about what's there to me is worth.
Yep.
Considerable amount. That says, what do we want to do with Grid? Do we want to be aggressive? Do we want to walk away from it? Whatever. Then be informed there.
So where is, in relation to that property, where is the thing you call the stump dump? How close is it?
Some distance away.
Yeah.
Some stuff is down in School Street.
Yeah,
So, should have been, all right, so it sounds like, look at you now, like,
Yeah, I'm glad we're having this discussion, because I think that. Part of me thinks that this is a unique item in that. It's the one ARPA item where the select board can't just approve the expenditure, it happens because it needs to be approved by town meeting. And you can't really make a. You can't just go to town meeting and say, well, we want you to spend $250,000, but we don't know whether it's going to be there. So you need to do at least something. I mean, also the question then will come up, well, what does town intend to do with this property?
Yes.
But there,
That's the big question.
okay, yeah, so then the stormwater management system is something which is a whole other can of worms, for which there might. I think it's very interesting, but I think there's gonna be a lot of very skeptical questions and it'll be. It's hard to estimate what the cost would be.
costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's at least some value in having it. Kathy, as you were saying, business owners available as parking, and you could. So I think that there's multiple uses. Yes.
Well, and several years ago, Carolyn Dykeman actually had a carve out for 150 grand. In one of the state capital bond bills or something, that I don't know if that's totally water under the bridge at this point, how those things work. But it might be an interesting question to ask, is there some way that still is active?
So the way those bond bills work, I think we had this discussion before. And I think it was this particular issue, is that yes, money was included in the bond bill. But getting it passed through the legislature and then getting the governor to release it are two very different things.
I understand.
So roughly 20% of whatever gets voted actually never gets.
Yeah. But the question in my mind is that particular piece totally dead now, or if we could find the right political support? Could that money still be there, or do we have to start over to get state support for something like this? I don't know.
I think it's still, I could be wrong. I'm looking at Vanessa. She can throw something at me if I am, but I think that, I think that appropriation sits there. It technically sits there and is available. And if you can make enough of a case and enough of a convincing case.
Maybe Senator Eldridge when he's cutting the ribbon. Right?
Right. But I mean, but what Mr. Dennington brought up, I think is really the crux of the argument. So we're gonna spend $250,000 to do what? And, I know Mrs. Stivers, you and I've had conversations about potentially, as you put it, the benefits of Grid wanting to get rid of this parcel to the town, doing this, taking it off their hands. Conversations that I had, again, this was months ago and everything, and that with their team that deals with property, is that, the property was acquired through ratepayer money, therefore the ratepayers need to get the value back for the property. And so, I think that 252 number is a real number.
Yeah. In their minds. Well,
And like I said, and then the question is, so what do we intend to do with it next? And because the 252 now leads to these level of expenses for certain things, and obviously I guess something wrong.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I'm putting out another brand state traffic. January meeting.
Oh, I agree with you, Gregory. So we can't answer any of the other questions, other than tonight, we could ask Mark to basically come back with a proposal to do a 21E.
let's see what it costs. Yeah.
Wouldn't it really need to first contact National Grid?
Correct.
Yeah, they would even be willing to.
Yeah.
let-
They require us to enter into a purchase and sale in order to do the 21E.
They might, because you're gonna say, wait a minute,
Correct.
you're just gonna expose this land as dirty.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But why not at least
That's the
reach out
question.
and start a conversation and say, that we're interested, but we need to understand more about the property. We would like to have a phase one done.
And maybe ask them to tell us what's there in terms of their records, what was there? Was there a substation, 3 transformers, or?
I think I'd rather just have them agree to a 21, for
Okay.
phase one for 21E, simple tabletop, that's gonna give you all that.
Yeah.
So, Mark, years ago too, with some level of uncertainty, I guess, on Newton Street right now, what's gonna happen, and there was extra capacity in the wastewater with,
Mr. Kwan.
Mr. Kwan.
Still is.
Is there might be an opportunity there as well to at least have a discussion again and see if there's any opportunity to tie some of this in through there. And again, that then leaves the door open, Sam, on what potentially the town could do, parking, whatever, on that. So again, I
I'm
think.
not aware that issue has been raised since the last EDC meeting that was held at St. Mark's. So if you can remember how long ago.
I know, but I'm just saying, it might be a worthy conversation before we start
I don't disagree.
talking 6 figures and doing something that there may be another opportunity. That's
Again, it could be separate issues in terms of wastewater.
Yeah.
versus parking.
absolutely. So we should probably explore that as well.
So we leave this as it is for now. or
Well,
leave it, or-
Leave it there. And Mark will start doing the investigation and get a phase one.
I think I'm glad we're doing this because I think one of the things that gave it a little bit of urgency was your description of the meeting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I did not know that just how small and not ideal situation is for.
Every 18 days after close up. Okay, so we're gonna leave it there for the moment. We're gonna. Shortcoming. Okay, but the next one is the sidewalk. So remember we're meeting with capital next meeting. So what I thought we might want to consider tonight is actually going ahead and officially approving the $704,000. Tonight, for sidewalks, so that capital knows we've done that. And then, as we go toward having the new DPW superintendent in place, try to get a plan in place to start working on the sidewalk.
Yes.
I mean, I think everybody here wants sidewalks, right?
Yes. I
So-
think we just need to have a clear path. So, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I also wouldn't be like, I also think we just created some flexibility. With, let's say, we think we need 900. Okay, so now we have some buckets we can move around, so I think keep the 704 and then. You know, that we can always increase it if we end up having more than what, you know, if we go out with a higher bid, we're gonna get more efficient.
Oh, I don't think 7.4 is enough to be perfect.
Okay, it's
So
near
I think
enough.
it's- Yeah, but it's a down payment.
Drop
So
it by-
Nessa, can you go down a little bit more on the spreadsheet? Okay, so when we do that, we've dealt with every single thing that the ARPA committee has recommended, other than we're leaving National Grid alone for the moment. And then the two BOH pieces, small pieces at the bottom. Okay, so we're making progress here to, make sure we abide by the dates of using the ARPA money. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna make a motion to basically agree with recommendation from the ARPA committee to put $74,000 of the ARPA money into the sidewalk upgrade new bucket.
Second.
All in favor? All right, so that's it for the ARPA discussion. Okay. Regional dispatch. So Chelsea, feel free to chime in here when that's appropriate. But this week, remember the last meeting, we decided that we were a little concerned when we heard the young lady from Hopkinton basically tell us in our meeting that the Hopkinton select board knew nothing about the regional dispatch process, right? Yeah. So we agreed that the next step is to get the 4 towns together and really see where they stood. So that, because we heard the timing, we knew it's coming up. If we're going to get this grant cycle going, we've got to get moving here. So Mark reached out to his peers in Grafton, Westboro, Hopkinton. The proposal was to have select board chairs, have the town manager, administrators, and then have the group that've been working on this from the 7 towns, now 4 towns to participate. Either Grafton or Westboro said too big of a group, just have to be the 4 chairs and 4 town managers, administrators. So that's who met this week. Didn't we meet Friday? That's what time flies, surprise. So last Friday.
No, you met, yes.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Chelsea. Okay, so we met yesterday. You're right. We met yesterday on Zoom. So the 8 people were there, and it was very productive and very interesting. So to kind of cut to the chase, clearly Westboro is on board. They've been trying to do this for a while. This is like their 3rd or 4th time they've been trying to put this together. Clearly Grafton was on board. In fact, the Grafton town manager, who's fairly new, has done this before in another town. He's actually been in this process of putting a small regional together.
He did this out in Western Mass before and just briefly, there were 4 communities that entered into an IMA to move forward. But at the end of the day, there were 2.
2 dropped out.
2 that did it, and they actually retrofitted one of the existing public safety spaces in one of the communities. And the epilogue is that now they're looking to construct a completely new building simply for regional dispatch out there. So
And I believe he said the 2 came back.
so it's so.
Dropped out, actually came back later, so they changed them twice. All right, so the one that is not as far along in the process is Hopkinton, which we sort of heard of, right? But clearly the select board knows about, so that part was important. But they're not as far along. In fact, the select board chair, Amy said she watched our meeting on the 16th. She found it very constructive. And she'd like to do the same thing in Hopkinton. So, said, okay, the town manager, was probably the only sort of skeptical of anybody on Zoom. He has some concerns. He clearly would like to see the facility be in Hopkinton. There's a school at the start of Marathon. That's what he'd like to see it. Westboro's got a new place in Westboro that they wanted. It's not the original place that was in the hospital. It's another place. So there's definitely a couple of competing physical spaces that don't have to be resolved. So what we agreed to do is the following. We talked about the timing. We talked about how to put together the 2 towns are the 3 towns are fully on board. Southborough, Westboro and Grafton, as far as where we are today, agreed that the correct, better process to do is an IMA, not do the letter that would put us down a level as far as what we get. So to do the IMA, that was very clear. No one even thought about that, do the IMA.
Hopkinton came around to that position at the end.
So what we said is, let's just go ahead and parallel it. Hopkinton, continue to reach out to the public, but let's go ahead and parallel and move this forward so that we can meet the timing on the grant, if that's what we're going to do.
With a four-town IMA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Westboro has the Foxborough IMA. Grafton has the one that he worked on, in Western Massachusetts. We've got the one that's attached to the college report, the sample. So, what Mark and I thought might be the better path for all of us is to let Westboro take the lead on a draft IMA, and their town manager seemed to want to do that. Put it together rather than all three towns doing their own, and then we try to see where they are. So it's just kind of hard for three to, so let them draft, we respond to it. So we think that might be the recommended path to the four of you as far as the next step goes. So that we can move forward with this timing. So that's how we left it. And then since then, we thought about some more. So tonight, I'm hoping we can kind of vote on the next step. As this is Chelsea's goal. She's been involved all along. So then maybe part of what we decide tonight is to do say, Chelsea, you will then take over this, right? As far as representing us. Keep this path going the way you think is appropriate. Okay, but that path would be to let Westboro draft IMA, we respond to it, right? Continue. I did ask the question, I wonder what you would do to the numbers if Hopkinton didn't go forward. And the answer was, and I'm not sure I buy it, but the answer was, well, the state will know their job out and give you more money. Okay, maybe. But there's going to be a lot of hope here. The Collins Center person is going to help draft the grant for the group. So we already know that for them. It sounds like one of the people on Zoom has a deep relationship with someone that's been involved in the 911 a long time. So we've got that. So sounds like everybody's pretty optimistic that this should get done for this cycle. No one knows yet what we're going to apply for, though. It's not like you're going to go in and have it all sketched out. And so we may apply for someone to help us, money for that. But apparently the states can kind of guide us. That's what they think as far as what we should apply for first in stages so that we
So it may not be a multi-million-dollar. It may be that, you have enough funding to do the first piece and to look to hire an executive director who will then help to shepherd the rest of the process. And then you would get subsequent awards to help with the construction pieces and the operation pieces. So, and again, the town administrator in Grafton, very helpful because he's been through this and he understands how this works. Doesn't get too excited about this and everything of that because he's got a confidence level as to I've been through this, I've done it. We've had a big group, we've had some people drop out, and this is how it actually does work out. So I think there's good confidence. It's good to have, I know Grafton is not contiguous with us and everything in that, and we don't do a whole lot in terms of regional services with them or calls and everything in that, but I think it's going to be good to have them in the process for the experience and what they bring to the table there.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Yeah.
The new Westboro site, is there anything particularly attractive about that in terms of redundant fiber access, redundant power access, et cetera? Or is this sort of a building they happen to have?
Donna Brown's building, I know that. So it was a dirty property. And Brownsville legislation cleans it up, whatever. So I guess it's clean now. Lisa found an article about where it is. So I don't know the answer to your question as far as that goes, but I do know it's on Brownsville site.
I think one of the things we did talk about in the meeting also was that we would look to schedule site visits for both the Center Street School parcel in Hopkinton and also this site in Westboro, so that people get a feel for the site, the location, what we're starting with.
Yeah.
And, and then what we'd be looking to do with the building, with the property, to bring it up to.
Is the Hopkinton location interesting in terms of redundancy for fiber and power?
I have no idea. It's right off Common in the downtown.
Don't plan to visit on Marathon Day.
It's the old location, so that's the old location where the volunteers would all meet to get your assignments. And they've now shifted that up the street to the other school, but
And I think too, Sam, on the Westboro site, I had read that, they're planning like passive recreation.
Yeah.
On there as well. We could be what, trails potentially, or whatever, something that would benefit people. as
but the Westboro board has taken a vote to utilize that property for dispatch.
Okay. Is it clear what Hopkinton's concern is at this point, or is it just they haven't vetted it enough yet? Do they have a specific concern that says we don't think it's good for us because of A, B, and C? Or?
I think it's more they just are a little bit behind where we are as far as the process goes. I don't think they are opposed to it.
Okay.
Yet. So I just think they've got to get caught up as far as making sure that they have discussed it with their.
Okay. I guess my overall high level concern is that, I think that the sort of the direction at a high level is abundantly clear. It's regionalization of the function. And the question is, how do you do it? How many steps? How fast? I remain very interested in Foxborough, for example, and that, do you take 2 steps when you can take 1 step now and get to the point where you're going to wind up in 10 years or 15 years or whatever.
Well, Mark will tell you, I thought it was. So.
And Ms. Cook will tell you that I also said Foxborough is a great solution. If we're the only one going, we only care about Southborough, or if any of these other people are going with us. And do you want to tell them what the Westboro chair said?
Bye-bye.
Yeah. There was no interest from the groups to move in that.
Now, I did ask if it's been gathered, no one has, so I said, "We can see this, no, they can see it."
Yeah.
But she's got the Foxborough IMA.
Yeah.
Interesting, Foxborough wasn't there. to
Oh,
begin with.
Westboro's been there.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
don't know it had been there.
Yeah.
So Foxborough was originally someplace else, and they moved to where they are right now. But the IMA that they signed did specify the location, they just changed locations.
Yeah.
But we're pretty close to being almost to the path of no return here, as
Yeah.
far as our decision here, so that's,
Yeah.
we've got to be,
Yeah.
we've got to understand that, once we sign an IMA, we've signed an IMA, so, until then, we can still decide to do something different.
But you still, even if you sign the IMA, you still can do something different. There is still, because we did talk about that as well, there's still an exit strategy until you actually accept and start to spend the grant. That's when really you're locked into it.
But as I've said before, I'm interested in what the numbers are, financial numbers, and really have not done much analysis, to the best of my knowledge, that, if we went to Westboro, for example, what would that mean in terms of state funding and out of pocket for us over the next 5 or 10 years? And if we went to Foxborough, what does that number look like? I guess where I am at this point, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to go it alone for a while here. Particularly, we're going to have to spend more money on technology fairly soon. And I had the opportunity to spend some time at the dispatch center with Kyle, Stephanie, I guess. Yeah, very, very helpful, very enlightening. And I think there's some things that we could do to get a little more mileage out of what we have now, for example. But ultimately, the choice is to hire 5 or 6 more people to go it alone and make it work right, which I think is a real steep hill to climb from a budget standpoint. So I think we got to move in one of these directions, but again, I'd like to see more numbers. And maybe that's someplace where the capital committee, the advisory, can do some analysis to say what the numbers might look like.
So we have the numbers in the addendum, so, and the capital plan has, and I know Chief Achilles is on and Chief Newell's here. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but it's built into the capital plan for the next. I think it's in the next 3 or 4 years, so
907.
I don't have
That's
with
exactly.
For which
For-
function?
for doing it here, for doing the whole year, it's $1,000.
Okay.
Our, if we were to double in size for personnel.
Yeah.
And supervisor, blah, 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 you're
Okay.
probably looking at $900,000
When,
to double. with FY 23 rates.
And then after that, that 900,000 continues additionally. Not big, that's technology, right?
What?
So
I'm talking, so it's 907,000 for capital, 3 to 4 years out from now.
for new technology.
Yeah.
But that's no people.
Right,
If
so
we-
then if you double your budget, our dispatch budget is like $450,000. So assuming you just double to have 2 on, that doesn't include like if you had to hire a supervisor,
Right.
you're talking about 100,000 for that. Right, so you're over $900,000, plus you don't know what's gonna happen with our grants that we talked about, so we get $70,000 for grants, so. Right now, so you would be at 900,000 less the 70, assuming you don't get double.
Right.
Of that, so that's just to keep, and then on the Collins Center, operating budget. It's, about $300,000.
Which option
With-
is this?
This would be if we went in with the 4
4
towns,
towns.
not the 3. I didn't have time to crunch that today. I'm sorry, it's a cost savings of $300,000. So they're quoting 140,000, but I think we have to be careful with that number because you're gonna want to build some sort of capital amount in every year into some revolving. So-
Stabilization fund.
Right, so I think you gotta be careful with. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I don't think we should commit to the 140,000, because I don't think that's really
Yeah.
what we're gonna be looking at. I think we need to be more conservative than that, but I think if you're looking at pure numbers, you're talking about $900,000 to double the department, assuming we do that in FY 24 compared to 140.
Okay, so let's,
Big
so
difference.
in other words, just say we've got the numbers, we think we do.
But
So-
Foxborough, we don't have numbers for Foxborough.
Well, he said that day, we think Foxborough's probably 250 or so, going a year. So I think we've got a good fund, we can give it a good fund, but look what, they're saying we're going from 440 to 140, right? The capital piece, that's not gonna be 300 a year. So we're still talking about saving some money.
As
Substantial.
well as the capital piece of the 900,000 that's gonna be due in 2
Right, and the state funding probably will fluctuate too. So I think we need to, I think we do need to be conservative in what we are. I don't want to sell a bag of goods that this is gonna be a $300,000 savings every year. And this is not about saving money, right? It's about what is the best position we can put the town in? And I am not convinced that doubling in size is that answer. I think long-term regionalization is the right answer. But I just want to be careful about throwing those numbers around. I do think it's important to know what we're signing up for, but I think we need to be conservative.
But again, I agree, the big reason to do it is to get the coverage, support that you need operationally. From the operation, wherever it is. And again, if there is reasonable cost saving plus the operational redundancy. That's a pretty good argument.
So since Chief Achilles is listening to us, I do want to point out something that he said that I want to make sure is clear. He had said to us recently that if we don't go forward with the grant cycle this year, then he believes he's going to have to ask for, money to enhance the local dispatch operation, right? Well, even if we go forward with the grant this year, it's not gonna be in place right away. We're still talking at least probably 3 years. Foxborough said it's not, just so you know. What the gentleman that was here at the last meeting, at the 16th said, he said 3, is what he threw out there. So we're still miles away from solving the problem that Chief Achilles and Chief Newell have identified, right? So we got to understand that. He said, if we don't do it, then he's going to, well, we're still not going to have a place in a year, no matter what.
If we did, let's say Westboro. Would we have to spend the 900,000, whatever, on technology upgrades?
No, that's
We-
the hope would be that we would not have to upgrade what
We
we
could
currently have.
last for another 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, in theory.
And maybe I should have, Chief, if you want to come over, just raise your hand. You probably can answer that better than I can on the timing. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So the question was, if you could repeat it, Chelsea?
Just wanted to validate that if we get into this grant cycle, and move forward, that the intention would be to not have to upgrade the current dispatch equipment that you have in the capital plan for 900,000 in the next 3 years.
That's correct. And I just want to make sure that people know that I think in our capital, we identified the equipment as 10 years. So it's in the next 6 to 7 years, we'd be setting the $900,000. That was just to replace what we currently, or upgrade what we currently have. It was no enhancements to our system. So it did not include anything with radio towers or any improvements to overlook, our overlook site or any other antennas. So that 900,000 was just replace what we currently have for equipment.
Yeah,
You do have to, you do have to factor in the cost of systems. So one more thing to add, we just do have to remember to factor in the cost of employees, the staff, our current bill. So that's just one more thing.
Right.
I just didn't want that to get lost in these translations.
so depending on what we decide to do for a station, going darker. Yeah.
Just something to factor
Yeah.
in. Thank you.
Thank you.
During the meeting yesterday, here, Westboro talked about, they went back and looked at their data for, I think, 2 years, as far as what the impact of, because they are dark right now, already, of being dark is, and they looked at every single time, I guess, someone came into their, police station. And they were able to, basically bifurcate the reasons being there into a couple of buckets. And in the end, concluded that being dark didn't hurt anything at all. There was a solution to everything. Regardless of what the reason was that someone had come in. So they, after they did their work and studied the actual data for what people came in those 2 years, they were still happy with their decision as far as what they did. So they did see that as well.
So I think, yeah, I believe we may be confusing it with Grafton, but maybe not. And Grafton did I do recall Grafton they kept a log.
Okay, it may be grabbed.
Yeah, so just to embellish, they did a log of every time somebody came to the station, what services they were looking for. 90% of them required police officers. And it didn't make any sense to hire additional police officers just to sit there, to do something that's very easy for somebody to come in and summons a police officer and have them come down. The other 10%, as the manager so put it, was fill out this paper and drop the box. Fill out the form that's hanging right here and drop it in the box type of thing. And so they looked at their peak times when people came in, and they hired a part-time admin to come in and to help to handle any of the traffic during the peak times. And that seemed to work for them. But again, one solution that works for somebody may not work for somebody else, and that was something that I think Hopkinton also was struggling with as to how to deal with that going dark issue. So that's, again, I think that's going to be an individual choice as to what the community is willing to accept.
And I think geography plays into that as well, Mark. I mean, we're 495, Route 9, Grafton is kind of off the beaten path to some level. And I think to track the traffic that may come in might be very different here in Southborough versus a Grafton. So I would have some concern, and I still do, with going dark. So
I mean, I think it would be, I would be interested to see it. I don't want to see the chief wilt over there, but it would be interesting to have that
I agree.
data and understand what are people coming to the window.
Like right now, yeah.
What are they looking for? So we're understanding what the services are, because there'll be people that come out that will oppose it simply to oppose it. Right, but you need to have the factual data to back up the decisions you're making. Similar to Mr. Stiver saying, well, we need to understand costs.
Yeah.
We need to understand some of those pieces as well, because that's how you're going to be able to sell this, or are you going to lose it?
Yeah.
So.
I agree.
Okay, so what, I think we should try to decide tonight is the following. It sounds like all five of us are still, on the path that we do want to, consider regionalization. Right, there's no one saying stop, don't do it, right, in some form or the other, right?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, we've identified what the next step should be, which is, that Chelsea and whoever she needs to, for example, the gentleman that was here on the 16th, whatever she thinks, takes it from here as far as working with the, at least Westboro and Grafton on the IMA.
And is there anything we can do to nudge Hopkinton,
Mm-hmm.
help them get on board, which I think, and again, I have not looked at any of those numbers, but I gotta believe that 4 is better than 3 in terms of participation for the rest of us. Would you agree, Chelsea?
Yeah, but I don't think it's a showstopper.
Not a big amount.
Because part of what Chelsea and this group are going to have to consider, do they want to build it bigger than it needs to be so they can add on people?
Yeah.
You know, there's a whole lot of details to be worked out.
So Hopkinton, and again, take these numbers with a grain of salt. Their cost per community is 233,000. Grafton's 266, we're 140, and Westboro's 429. So you're taking the 233 and we're gonna get the smallest piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So I'm actually not overly concerned, and Chief, I know you have relationships with the Hopkinton chiefs. I think we want to go in on with people who are committed to the project, and I think some will just take longer than others. I think we were pretty proactive about talking about this as a board publicly for 18 months now. I don't know that every community did it that way. No other select board from any other town on the 7 that we're on was on that working group. I was the only select board representative. So I think we were more proactive on making sure that you all were aware of it, and we had those public forums earlier than maybe these towns. So I'm not overly concerned about it. Don't forget, there's 3 other towns who went through this process who can always
Sure.
say, okay, we're actually liking what you're trying to do. And so I'm not.
Let me flip it around. Is there anybody else out there hovering that we might approach, and say, hey, guys, we're gonna probably do this?
Yeah.
And do you want to get on board here? Here's an opportunity.
Yes.
Well, and I
Gotta
think.
believe the more it's better.
I think
Yes.
I think it'd be short-sighted to build a dispatch center. for communities.
Yeah.
Right?
Because remember South Foxborough, all that moved around?
Yeah.
So I really think that either you're gonna be on the front side of the wave, or you're gonna be waiting for a boat to pick you up
Under the wave.
at some point. Well, look, I mean, this is the way the state is going. The chief, could tell you that when it comes to, the 911 grants and everything, and that, they target them for certain things, and if regional dispatch is where they want to go, they're gonna begin to target those for those communities that are regional.
Sure.
And so, we want to make sure that, if we have an opportunity to, stay ahead of things and move in that direction before we're pushed. I think that, there was some benefit. One of the other things we did talk about at the meeting is, Hopkinton, getting on the ground floor of these discussions. It's obviously, you have some say in the structure of the governance. Do you want to put together, something that has a model like Foxborough, which essentially is its own entity, which essentially you're just buying the service from them.
Yeah.
Or do you want a governance structure where it's each community has a vote into, how this happens, how this moves, how everything happens, and
Which I'm actually less interested in Operation Jackson, but that's another
I
issue.
think from a liability point of view, it's a whole other ballgame, and I think Foxborough structure is somewhat attractive because they have to provide you with service.
Yeah, and also, again, I would hope that as this moves forward, I guess Chelsea, Mark, that maybe you look at the map that we've seen and have the hole in it around us, and say, make a friendly call to the folks who are out there.
I don't, but it's not gonna happen if we're gonna have, I mean, it's too, You're not gonna get somebody new starting right now and be ready to go with a January grant. You can start talking to them.
But that would be helpful too, just to know if there are 6 others who are interested, then I think it affects the kind of facility you think about it.
Yeah, I also think though that the chiefs have their districts that they're
Yeah.
a part of, and if we stand one up in Westboro, then the state's not gonna be supportive of one going up in Hopkinton, or,
Right, oh, sure.
right, so we're gonna take that part of the market, and I think they have good relationships and go to their district meetings, and they'll know what's going on. I don't know that adding someone right now is a good idea for us at this point.
I'm not suggesting we bring somebody in, but if there's interest out there, it may affect what we think about building. First step, we need to leave space for 3 more. There are 3
I
others.
think you do that anyways.
You do,
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yeah.
You try to build a space that you've got room to add.
Mhm.
Okay.
And just to be clear, when we're talking about adding, and either chief, feel free to chime in here. If we add, it would be like a separate pod
Yes.
that we would add. It would not
Not a new
be
building or
flipping
whatever.
staff back and forth between teams, right? Like, it's really the oversight and then the space within the building, not who is like, we would still have the same dedicated team working the 4 towns that initially were in, or the 3 towns, and maybe add a 4th in, but it's not
Right.
like you're gonna have 10 towns serviced by
Right.
me. I could work 10 towns. That's not how
Understand.
that's not how I would intend to set it up, and, okay.
But just again, let's keep our head up here and see if there's other interest out there and think about the bigger picture.
I think we need to figure out what we're doing first, and then I think this has been a long
Yeah.
process, and as we know, we've whittled it down. I think the communities around us are well aware of what's going on.
And again, I agree with you. Our focus is first priority here.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to get done between now and the grant cycle. I don't know that adding somebody in between now and that period is really beneficial.
And I'm not suggesting that is likely or
Okay.
whatever. I just but people need to know, I hope, and think about it.
Mhm.
And I think once you commit and start building the center, that's gonna happen. You're gonna. Surrounding towns.
They see one up and running like we saw Foxborough.
Exactly.
You know, go wow. So it does, when you see it, you really know what you're getting to.
Yeah.
Foster, you really.
And knowing there's one local, I think that's key.
Yeah.
And that's the key for me is in thinking about the staff from all these towns, you know, to be able to, instead of our staff potentially having to go to Foxborough, there might be something closer, you know, to home for them as well. And they know the towns as well. And I just think it's gonna create interest around surrounding towns as well, once they were committed and we start the process.
I also think we can rely on the state to help get it. Like, the state's looking to, yeah.
Yeah, because grants are gonna start going away, they're all gonna go to regional. Versus.
Or more, at least more of
More.
them.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's
so
clear.
have we agreed on the next step? Which is to basically anoint Chelsea officially to go forward at this point with the other 2 towns that have said yes, for sure. To work on the IMA. We're all gonna be invited to go see the places. Everybody can do that, right?
And then the next step after that would be a future meeting. Here would be a draft. First step would be, and it probably would be, you can't go through a stage where each select board has a bunch of edits that are kind of irreconcilable. It's going to be a fairly streamlined process. Or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
In principle, yes.
I think it's realistic though.
What I,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's a realistic
that-
concern as you look forward, yeah.
do you have an idea of when that would happen?
I'd say sorry.
No.
I'd say sometime in the next 2 to 3 meetings. I think you need to have something in place for the grant application. And so if we're looking to apply, if you're looking to apply late January. Then we have to have something done fairly quickly. Again, I don't think this is different than an IMA to look at water service. This is different than an IMA for, so I think this can be fairly streamlined. I don't think this needs to be complicated. So.
Okay, and there is a template.
And there is a template and we do have a couple of different versions, to look at.
The state's done it 26 other times, so there are, we're not first here, and so they should be very helpful in. It's done.
And we also want to attend the training in January for the.
And that's one of the prerequisites for applying for the grant. So I think at that point, you get an idea of who actually is applying.
Right.
So you will know your universe of competition, so to speak, as to who else is looking for grants.
Do we think there are any other new regions out there that are looking for grants at this point? or-
He didn't know, so
Yeah.
I don't think we know. He didn't know. He
But
said it's $40 million.
But I think, as you said, we're the hole in the donut.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's very attractive if we're looking to cite something here.
We're the first to fill that hole.
And we're looking to put something that, would have the ability to take on more at some point. I think it's an attractive option for the area and for the state to have something. So.
Everybody in agreement?
We done?
All right. All right, Chelsea. All right.
Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you. Okay, so the next one is to, review the policy, the revised policy for the lieutenant position, and then the related job description. Okay, so, Mark, you want to kind of explain?
Sure,
the
so
policy?
the policy is something that's been in place for a number of years. I don't know how much it's actually been revised over the years. I would refer to Ms. Hale. She's got more tenure than I do here, but we worked with Ms. Federoff, Attorney Federoff, to try to put together some changes in the policy, which gives the board some flexibility as to the candidate. Again, the policy is driving those items that would not specifically be addressed for other SAP employees in the personnel bylaw. And the policy is going to help to drive the discussion. The board has created a side letter agreement with the lieutenant candidate that you've selected for the position. You did this with former Lieutenant Newell, and essentially said, here are the things, with the SAP, you get all the things in the bylaw, but these are the things that carry either from the union contract, such as clothing allowance, or this is, how we do the position, in addition to what the SAP provides for the employee. So, this kind of gives you a little bit of structure as to, how the board will address the issue with the preferred candidate.
Okay. So it's my understanding from talking to Ms. Hale and to Mr. Purple that this policy hasn't been changed in about 15 years or so. Something like that. So it's pretty old. So it got dusted off. You see the changes that are being proposed to it. But to my mind, there's one real significant thing on this, which is the ability to earn overtime. So to kind of back up a little history, the lieutenant before, when Chief Newell was lieutenant, Sean James was eligible for overtime. Okay. I don't know why, don't know the details. We'll forward to when Marty Newell took the job. This position was not eligible for overtime. Okay, so here we are. now with his replacement, and the proposal is to go back to what it was with Sean James and to let it be eligible for not only the details, which it would have been already, but true overtime, time and a half overtime for anything worked over 40 hours. So that's to me the biggest change in what we're looking at here.
I think the one thing to point out with the agreement, the way that, and I appreciate the way that Attorney Federoff has crafted this. And Chief Newell and I have had discussions about this, because you gotta remember the chief is responsible for the budget. He's responsible to manage the budget, and he's responsible to keep the budget balanced. And you know, I know that there are things that get in the way, but you want to try to, control what you can control. The way that Attorney Federoff has put this together is to identify the position that is eligible for overtime and for details. You'll notice the language in here. It's as assigned. So therefore assigned by the chief. Also, there is the piece at the end, which talks about, that you can't traipse on the collective bargaining agreement with the union members. There is a, and I would refer to the chief to take you down that yellow brick road if you want to talk about, how overtime is how people, get overtime shifts, detail shifts, the ordering that goes. Obviously, anything that the lieutenant would be eligible for would have to be after it is exhausted the process within the collective bargaining agreement. The other thing too to consider, lieutenant is making a significantly higher pay rate than a regular police officer or sergeant, and therefore overtime at a lieutenant's rate is going to be significantly more than it is, for a control officer or sergeant.
Ryan, you want to come on up so you can participate in this? We'll keep talking about you.
He was happy to just let me roll, but and if I got it wrong, he would have gotten up quicker. So.
Yeah. No, everything was correctly the way you explained it. It would be first right of refusal to the union members. If it was coming down to a situation where union members would be forced for a shift, then it would be introducing the option of the lieutenant to take the shift. So.
This was a discussion at the table this year. And the chief has basically stated it as was discussed, is that the union was looking to try to relieve the pressure of officers getting forced into overtime positions if no one was willing to take them. Was hoping that the lieutenant position would be a release valve for that, and lieutenant could take some of those shifts so people wouldn't get forced. However, the issue was tabled and then died on the vine simply because of the letter that Lieutenant Newell had with the board, which specifically prohibited him from taking overtime. So there was no sense putting something in place that couldn't happen. Now here we are. And so I would think that as the chief has stated, spirit of those discussions is going to guide, how that would work. And I think the amicable, path that the union would agree, with the lieutenant, having overtime shifts. And the details, I think is a separate thing. But I think it's the overtime piece that we just need to be honest.
Well, the details are, he or she was always gonna be able to do those, right?
Correct.
Even the chief could take details if everything else fails, right?
As
Yes.
long as everybody else had the option to take them and there was no other
Right.
takers.
So the chief, and what I had done with the previous chief is basically actually to work the detail, but I needed to be notified of it before they actually took it. So.
Can I bring up a concern, Kathy? So one of the things I kind of talked to Mark and Vanessa about this as well is one of the things that's not taken into account as we do this, and I understand it's an SAP position, but I think it creates a problem is a lot of these officers by their contract, have more vacation than is allowed by the SAP. So whomever takes this position is actually, it's gonna be a detriment to some level at their vacation time. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to consider this as a whole, as we look how this can potentially be fixed. I mean, for instance, if somebody's here, I don't know, I'm gonna say 15 years, through the union contract, Vanessa or Mark, what would it be? Eligible 5, maybe 6 weeks vacation? And 5, and then through the SAP, for that same time, they would be capped at 4.
Depending if you were hired in 4 or after 2007.
Okay, so I just think if we're,
July 1, 2007, it changed, so people before that were here.
right,
So
depending. So again, I think we need to consider, to some level, at least have a discussion as we look to fulfill this, is it's in some ways, it's a detriment because they're losing by stepping forward. And I know, Mark, you disagree with me on this, but I just think we should consider it because
I'm sorry, you got the chief sitting right in front of you. And if we want to talk about the vacation that he had under the SAP.
I get it.
Versus, and you know, again, it's a career path, right? And you've got to, you know, you determine, you know, I've talked with the chief about, you know, the things that he wanted to do in his career, where he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And the things and the sacrifices, the decisions he made, you know, in order to get there. I do think, you know, that there are benefits, you know, to this as well. You know, in that, you know, your quality of life, you know, your base pay, you know, things that you normally would have had to work overtime shifts, detail shifts in order to get that level of income.
And I get that.
So look, I do, but I do as well.
I
you
would be
know, Mark,
doing a disservice if I didn't bring.
No, there are
up to
two
the
sides to
board.
it.
You're just talking about vacation, because the reason you're seeing this sometimes is because of that, that's why this stuff ended back in here, is because of what you're saying too. The vacation wasn't in here, but that's why the military times put back in.
Fair enough, again, I just,
Oh, believe me, okay, so can we just stipulate a couple things to make sure we're all on the same page? This process so far, we've all agreed is going to be just like the chief was interim. Okay, and do we all agree that to qualify for lieutenant, you have to have a bachelor's degree, 4-year degree? That's what the.
Yes.
Okay, everybody agree with that?
I do.
And try to make sure that- And do we also agree that there is a limited number of internal people that meet that qualification currently?
Currently, there are 2.
Right, so let's put that, there's only 2 people that are eligible inside to apply for this, right? So it's not like we've got tons of people, here we go, we got 2 that could step up here. So,
And just, it is a limited number, but they're both great candidates.
Right.
Just so you know.
but my point is, we're trying to end up with a policy backed up by the SCP that is conducive to doing this. Right, so that's what we're trying to do tonight, is see if we can end up with what we think is appropriate for Ryan to go forward with to post this. Hopefully, have someone step up.
And to Lisa's point, now I understand the vacation thing, but I guess I feel that we're actually going a considerable distance here in terms of the overtime change. And so, at least in my view, that's should be sufficient. I don't feel a great obligation to make people totally whole on all counts here. I think we've done a substantial amount here in terms of actual income opportunity with this. And so I'm satisfied. That should be enough, I guess. If that's not enough, then think about it again. I'm okay with.
And would you want, Lisa, the lieutenant's position to have more vacation than the chiefs?
no, that's the problem, Kathy. You've got officers that have more vacation than the chief. So, again, I don't know where the issue lies in this, but I just feel, and again, this is, maybe this is the answer. I don't know, but I just worry that, you know, we're putting people in a position and they're gonna lose something in order to better themselves. Is it a bad thing? I don't know, but I just felt I needed to at least bring it up and voice my concern, on this, that's all.
I mean, I think, you know, there are officers whose gross pay is more than the chief, more than mine.
I know.
You know, probably approaching the superintendent. Now, they probably have to work about 4,000 hours in order to accommodate that, and they have those opportunities to. You know, but we're talking about, trying to. Again, some of the things, you're talking about leave time, you're talking about pay. We're closing gaps in different ways. Some things we can't. Address. So, I think this is an effort to try to address the issue in the best way that we can.
Yeah.
Without, and one of the things Ms. Hale always talks of, you've got to try to have some level of equity, right? So you want to make sure that you're not doing something drastically different for another employee that's covered under the same set of rules and regulations.
I get it.
This makes it somewhat special. I think that the things in here don't go so far out of bounds that, that it's something that, the board should consider. But I do think that it tries to, to close that gap a little bit.
Fair enough.
I think it's a reasonable effort, and if it turns out it's not sufficient, we don't get any internal applicants, then we go outside. And you don't have that problem in terms of,
Or reconsider this. So, Chief Newell, do you support the ability for the lieutenant position to be eligible for overtime?
I do.
That's helpful.
Can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you know how many shifts per year we do force it,
I don't know per year, I would say,
or month?
month force, I'd say only like 1 or 2.
So that's all this would be eligible for, is if it was gonna be a force. And what would happen if it was during the day?
If it was during the day.
Yeah. So let's say
it
you-
would still, it would be enough, and that's where I'd like to have some sort of. Say in the actual force part of it. For the overtime, at least have, if it was during the day, during the working hours.
Yeah.
It's not, it
So
wouldn't have.
I'm just saying, yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not creating a loophole where,
Well, at least Monday through Friday.
well, right,
Yeah.
during the work, during your 7 to 3 shift.
During your
or,
regular
There's a
shift.
hand up too.
With it being an executive, an administrative position.
Yeah.
And that the working hours for the administrators Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
It would just be strictly for that.
So you would still do a force in during the day
Yes.
if you had that,
Yes.
okay, and would you need to increase your overtime budget to accommodate this?
It would, yes. It would.
By how much would you increase?
I wouldn't be able to tell you right now exactly, but I can definitely get figures. Before we need to.
Okay.
But it is something that I would have to operate within an existing budget. So I have to be prepared for.
Because this would be applicable in FY 23, we wouldn't wait for this for FY 24, right? This would be upon hire.
You've got a budget, you gotta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be curious as to what you would increase your FY 24 budget for, because I think I need to know that.
Yeah, I do have, I don't have it with me, but I do have some numbers, if that is the case.
Okay.
My business administrator would bring some up, so I
Okay,
can get those to you, for
So-
examples.
Chief, I'm sorry, just one follow-up to that. I'm assuming that when you're looking at the number of force ends for overtime positions. And you're saying 1 or 2 a month, that's really based on no other issues, no FMLA, nobody, pretty much full
Correct.
staffing. So
Right.
obviously that would be exacerbated
Right,
if you've got somebody on military leave, somebody who's out sick, somebody, that type of thing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I just want to point that out, that those opportunities. would fly.
yeah,
Does the same rule apply to details as far as who gets them? Do you have to go
through the entire,
first and
yes.
then what's left over could go to lieutenant? and then-
Yes. So if the day is in the schedule where, people put their name down, they want to work a detail on Wednesday, whether it's a day off or whatever it may be. The lieutenant could essentially now put it's the same way before, but to put the name down for a Wednesday evening, after the workday. And if there's an open detail, he can get called if nobody else wants the detail, but it goes to everybody else first.
So there's really no way you can promise one of the two candidates X amount of overtime, X amount, you just keep.
No, it's all fluid.
There's opportunities, there's nothing guaranteed.
Of course, they know how it all works. They live it every day.
Yes.
Mr. Rooney, we see your hand up. We're gonna bring you over, so be patient. Okay, so,
If nobody wants a detail, then it goes to other departments. Correct. So the details.
So
get
it'll
filled
go,
elsewhere.
well, I'm sorry, we'll go to traffic constables. And if nobody wants it from there, then we'll go to another town. So,
Yeah, so one of the things that we do with the communication officers contract this year. If you recall, I think the previous chief had set up a training program for some of the fire.
Yep.
Right, so when the communications officers settled their contract, they said, we'd like to be next in line after the police, but before fire. And so that opportunity exists for them to take details, assuming that they've gone through the training and everything, so. So that is and I'm not sure that any of them have taken advantage of that yet.
the details,
The dispatchers.
Training.
they have here and there, but not a
Okay,
lot.
but limited.
Yeah, limited.
So for example, remember when the bridge placement work was being done on, with the weekends? We could not find enough people, to do that. I had the chief calling me saying, look, if I don't take the detail, then they're gonna run the traffic, they're gonna run the detours through the neighborhoods. Which is gonna create a lot bigger of an issue type of thing. So, there are those opportunities. It depends. We have a lot of big projects and everything in that where we have a lot of detail work. So, I think a lot of our officers, had as many details as they wanted. At some point, that for Main Street, for other projects.
There will be opportunity
Sure.
for, lieutenant, chief, everybody to work the details. For the outside to the time.
I had a couple of small points about the draft, but if you want to talk about it, big picture item.
well, to me, that's the big picture. I mean, that's what's
Yeah.
really changing here is, do we want to, basically open this position up for overtime? It sounds like it's fairly limited as to what it did.
I like the answer is yes, so.
I mean, I would like to know the number.
Well, is it, you want to get the position posted and?
Yeah, like I've been without a second in command since February, so I would like to have some additional.
So, I mean, I haven't asked a lot of questions, but I read this, had a lot of questions, and then I think what you're just trying to balance reducing some of the inequities that there have been as you move up. And whether this is balanced out by the fact that the additional compensation through overtime through detail assignments that are really only going to go through the lieutenant if they're not otherwise because by people in the union. And I think that that's a fair balance of the different factors.
What, does anyone know off the top of their head what the range of this position is on the SAP?
Yeah, I looked at it. So there's actually a pretty wide range.
I mean, if we went above that one, we're
In
gonna
eight,
get.
grade 8, right?
That's.
Yes, in 8. Get the FY 22. Sorry, I don't have the FY 23.
It capped out at 118.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And both candidates obviously are eligible for because I've got a bachelor's, so,
Right.
so that's a fact. And the plan for bachelor's is 25%, that's 25.
20 for bachelor's, 25 for master's.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
That's another 20 something.
I think the max is like $56.
With the plan in.
No, that's per hour. So you're paying time and a half.
By 2,000, and that's really. Okay, so
Yeah, this has been a while, so do we want to try to get this resolved tonight as far as this policy approved? The job description approved so that chief can post it, or are we not there yet?
Let's do it. I think I'm ready to do it.
Do you want to hear from Mr. Learning first?
And so, Vanessa, can you bring over?
While you're doing that, could I ask 2 points? One, the footers on the page says policy updated 2002, so change that. And there's language about where the person resides. And it says something about may be able to move within 20 miles of Southborough. I mean, it seems to me that ought to be more positive than that to say will move to within 20 miles of Southborough within 6 months of appointment or something like that, which may not be relevant for the current candidates. I don't know, but that to me was a total loophole there, so we were not required to move. So we're hoping we would tighten that up a little bit.
Both are very low.
Yeah.
So we should do it.
They're both well within it, right?
Yes.
You know, well, it's the second one.
Yes.
So that's not. an
But
issue.
might as well fix the policy if it turns out these two potential candidates.
I got some minor things too. Are you here, Mr. Looney? No. Yes.
Ms. Cook, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Hi
Well,
there.
first of all, thank you for recognizing me. And happy holiday season to you all. I apologize for not being there and traveling. As I think Ms. Cook and Ms. Braccio know, I have a particular affinity to our public safety employees. This town has got a phenomenal group of police officers and firefighters. And so, full disclosure, whenever I have an opportunity to advocate on their behalf, I will do it. I kind of have a basis or understanding of what I'm talking about. I grew up in a house when my dad was the chief of police in Waltham, and as a prosecutor, I worked with departments as large as Boston and as small as Belmont and Stowe. And I think I mean, it's axiomatic that if you are getting a elevation or a raise or a promotion, there should be a corresponding increase, or at least there should not be a decrease. And I've had numerous conversations with Chief Newell about this, and I agree that there are two very viable candidates that he has in his department right now. And I'd be somewhat cautious about Mr. Stiver's comment about, listen, hey, if the two there don't want to apply, we'll go outside, because issues of cohesiveness and morale are critically important in these types of departments. And if you have sergeants that do not want to apply for a lieutenant position, that just creates a whole other set of problems. And it's really not a road that you want to go down. I've looked at the incomes in the lieutenant positions in Marlborough, Framingham, Hopkinton, Northborough, Westborough, and Ashland. And my comments may be more appropriate for the personnel board. And I've reached out and spoken with Mr. Rubenstein in that regard. But as chief executives, I do think you have a role in this to look at not just the starting salary for lieutenants there, but when you do that, you really need to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because in Southborough, the lieutenant is the second in command, which there are so many, as Chief Newell will tell you, the responsibilities are enormous. In a lot of these towns that I just mentioned, there's steps between the lieutenant and the chief, that being captains and deputy chiefs. So the job is not as onerous. I do think they should have an opportunity that next lieutenant for overtime. And also there's a question in my mind, and I don't know the answer, and I'm not sure that this is accurate, and maybe the chief can comment on it, but it's my understanding that a existing sergeant, if he were to go to the lieutenant, also loses 17 administrative days. And again, I've not researched that. I just have it in my notes, and I don't know if the chief is able to comment on that. So, like I said, I am scheduled once the personnel board has this discussion to be there and to advocate for the next lieutenant position. And I just wanted to put that stake in the ground to at least get you guys thinking about it, because it is an important decision. And it's not one where I think you can say, listen, if the two guys don't want it, we just go outside. I think that would probably be the worst scenario for the town. And Ms. Cook, thank you. Hopefully you all been able to hear me. And again, I apologize for not being there in person.
Thank you, John, but as you can probably tell, we're trying to figure out a way to make this job enticing to the two internal candidates. That's what we're trying to do. So I didn't hear any specific suggestions from you. If you've got specific suggestions, let us know.
Well, again, like I said, the benefit package right now, as I understand it, a lieutenant can sign up for a detail, but can only get that detail, chief, if everyone else or all the sergeants and patrol officers are unavailable. Is that a union provision or is that in the SAP? I don't know the answer to that, Kathy.
It's a union position.
CBA, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the administrative days? Is that in the SAP or is that a union position as well?
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Well, I think the advocacy there, then Kathy, would be before the personnel board, at least for that component of the discussion.
But you're basically saying, change it for one position, but not for anyone else, and it would be. You change it for lieutenant, but not for, and then the chief has, less days than the lieutenant. So that's our problem is, you've got the chief too, who did give up vacation to become the chief, going from lieutenant to chief. So we've got to, we're in between these two. We've got to be careful about what we do here.
Yeah, I can absolutely appreciate that. I'm not sure what happened or how it happened under Chief Paulus. Again, I maybe was not paying as much attention as I should have been back then. But from to go to where Lieutenant James was to when Lieutenant Newell was, I think that was a significant change. I don't think it was a significant change in the compensation and the overall job. And Ryan, Chief Newell, obviously, I am not advocating against you. Hopefully you know that, guys. I just want to try to at least address this lieutenant position, and to the extent it benefits you, again, I am here, and as I disclosed, as an advocate, Kathy, as opposed to, trying to make all ends meet.
No, I know you are. Absolutely know how well you do this, so.
And I don't look at it that way, John.
I'm sorry? Okay, good.
So. Move on.
Okay, so, I think we're back to where we were, which is we've agreed that we want this to be, eligible for overtime, right? But we haven't changed much else. I've got some minor things. I don't even, why did, after we have repaired our eyeglasses, I've never seen that.
About that too.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like that. And then,
That is in the collective bargaining agreement.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine to, put it there. I just never have seen that in there.
I actually had to make use of that when a prisoner punched me in the face and took my glasses and did that with them, so.
And then what is a defibrillator stipend?
It's a DFib stipend. It's a annual, it's like a stipend for being trained in use of the DFib. It's
So
about
if you get
$500.
trained, it's like-
CBA, yeah.
So it's
CBA,
one
yes.
shot.
Yes,
It's
every year.
every year.
Yeah.
So once you get trained, then you get it every year from that point on.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so that's. Okay, so anyone else have any other proposals, which is possibly their substantive?
Comment that we're basically, it sounds like waiving some of the Fair Labor Standards Act requirements here for exempt, non-exempt. I'm assuming Kate signed off on that. I mean, we're doing something that's consistent.
So
with
she's
what
the
the
one,
FLSA
she's the one who created the language. She has done similar agreements.
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing is reinforcing the benefit that the FLSA is trying to protect here. So I would think it would be consistent. It's usually dicey to have to override some federal law.
Well, you know, it's usually the other way around, is you're not, you know, when you're supposed to, not,
I know.
you know, time you don't have to.
That's why they did it. So I think we ought to be on solid ground here. As long as she goes on board with that, that's fine.
I wouldn't do this without her. So, you know, I mean, wanted to make sure, and again, with the timing and, you know, and, I forget who just said it, Mr. Rooney, somebody, you know, wanted to help the chief. The chief has actually been alone, so to speak, since February.
Yeah.
You know, you had lieutenant acting since February, lieutenant then became the chief, still no lieutenant. So really, it's been a hole in the team. And I think we tried to set this up so that the board could have a good discussion, which I think you've checked that box tonight on this. But hopefully give you a pathway to move forward, so the chief can begin to move forward, try to fill that hole. And try to at least do that, you know, get that piece of the team in place, because you gotta remember. That likely is going to mean another process further down for, you know, for advancement.
Mark, I'm gonna ask you a question, but I should know the answer when I don't.
I hope I do.
Other towns. Is the lieutenant position contracted position, union position, or SAP position? What is the norm on this? I mean, I'm not looking to recreate anything. I'm just asking a question, if you know. I should have checked myself, so.
I get, you know, it depends, you know, civil service community or not, you know, there's different parameters. I think that normally the chief's position is the only position that's contracted, so the chief is the only one that has the Mass General Law, the statute for the contract, similar to fire chief, similar to town manager, town administrator, right? So they're the only ones that have it as a break. So most often it's gonna be the chief.
I would say to some of the surrounding towns have a command staff union, so there'll be sergeants.
Okay.
Sergeants and lieutenants in the command staff union,
Got it.
and then the patrol.
This is how South
Our union's not big enough to break it up into.
I get it, I get it. I'm just trying to figure out if we're doing something outside the norm of what other towns, but obviously we're not. This was the best avenue, fine. Thank you.
I have a process question. If we approve this, then do we actually post it? Look for applicants, and regardless of how many applicants we get, do we do an assessment center kind of thing? How does that normally work?
So, I'll answer it in principle.
I'm trying to figure how long it will take, assuming we do this.
So the chief is said there are two internal members in the department who qualify, who were eligible to become lieutenant. One of those members recently went through an assessment center already. So, you know, depending on who puts in and how it plays out, there may not be a value in doing another assessment center. You know, and then again, you know, so I don't know what I don't know till the chief puts out the advertisement and you see who puts in for the position.
But in theory, this could roll out pretty quickly.
In theory, this could roll out pretty quickly. I think it's gonna roll out fairly quickly. The chief is, again, it's in his best interest and he's pretty committed to moving this along, because again, this process is then gonna lead to another process for another promotional, you know, opportunity that needs to happen. So, I would think he would move pretty expeditiously on this, and so, you know, hopefully you've got, you know, something before you. You know, early February. Depending on how things go.
Okay. Lisa, you continue not to break, but I don't know how to make it.
Kathy, I'm fine. I'm just pondering everything. Again, I think it's important to move forward. Again, I voiced a concern I had. I completely respect where everybody's at on this, so I'm good.
Okay, what are the typos or? That's it, you said you had here?
The footers on most of the pages was 2002.
Okay, so
And
get
the
the
other-
footers. Get the footers out of there.
Yeah, and then the other, the residency requirement, be able to reside within, I'd say, reside within 20 miles.
Okay. Everybody okay
Well,
with that?
it does say must be. Must be.
Must be able to, but what does that mean? Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, physically, I
saying-
could move, but I'm not
he just
going
wants to,
to.
must be able to, must reside. That sounds fine.
Sorry, I work with people who spend a lot of time finding reasonable ways to find loopholes in contracts.
I'm able to do it, I just didn't do it.
Yes, that's right.
I
So,
was trying to get the-
so just to try and figure this out, you're okay with the beginning of that, must be able to successfully complete all phases. And then
Must
if the second
resign.
piece after the comma and get rid of being able to,
Yeah, must reside.
correct? So get rid of those three
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else on either? Okay. All right, so I will make a motion to approve the revised police lieutenant and citizen employment policy as in front of us and the lieutenant job description with the two changes that Sam has. Second. All in favor? Okay. All right.
Thank you all very
Good
much.
luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so Chelsea was still. Okay, so I'm gonna jump to the last one first, because Lisa's moved after that one. This was easy. Okay, so I just want to get a list of departments, committees, et cetera, that we want to see over the next few meetings, just like we've seen rep, golf committee, and now Concom. So, Andrew. Who do you want to see?
EDC.
Who,
gonna say.
see? Okay,
Yep,
yep,
that's a good one,
yep,
especially talking about the discussions we had about downtown.
yep, so I'm getting one from everybody. Sam next.
I sent you a list,
Well, I don't remember the rest. Give me one.
just one,
Yeah. there is one.
Arts Council,
Arts Council, okay,
new group. I'd like to see what they're up to.
thank Lisa.
Open space. That was
Chelsea.
Youth and family in May.
Seen them in May?
Yep.
Okay, because of mental health?
Yeah, I have a whole list of items.
All right, that was mine. Oh, and
Okay,
another-
sorry.
No, that's fine. I want to do council on aging.
That's a good one too.
Yep.
Okay, so we got, and we'll have more, but that'll get us through the next few meetings, right? As far as that's go. Okay.
Okay, so this is not necessarily budget related.
This is under the budget. No,
Okay.
this is the heart of what they do.
Just an update, what's going on?
And EDC, to talk about this meeting, so I was looking at EDC too. And
I was still.
Well, just another one to throw out there is potentially a department. Because I know we sometimes have joint meetings, they're often sometimes difficult to schedule. The planning board, they're often kind of on an issue basis. I mean, I know that there's things that are always on the planning department that I think we could use periodic update for, even just one kind of came up a little bit earlier today about the bylaw that the planning board was looking into, which maybe was how did that interact with something that Melissa was doing? And also, this came up at the SHOPC meeting last night, the status of the MBTA communities compliance, where there's a deadline of January 31st. And I think there could be some value, even if we can't have the scheduling difficult, planning board meets on Monday nights, we meet on Tuesday night, and finding a time that works for all of us.
I let you have two, I put planning down. It's number 6.
Yep,
But
but
we
it's
got
not meant to.
MBTA communities on the January 3rd agenda.
Okay,
So we saw, did you guys get the email? Probably, yeah, I just, anyway, they've got.
Planning board's
They're
working.
working
on
on
it.
So
Yeah.
I replied, so they wanted to have to weigh in. So I said, well, because we got to the end of the month of January, so we're gonna do that on January 3rd, because 20th really is cool as far as agenda. is concerned. Okay.
What about SPAC?
That's a good one.
That'd be good, yeah.
That's a good one.
Back,
Yeah.
okay,
Public accessibility. Yeah.
That is a good one. Okay, and we're gonna meet with MTC at some point too, so we got more. I'm just trying to get next year, right? So we'll keep going till we get to
CBA. They haven't been in a long.
I haven't,
time.
since I've been on the board, they haven't.
It's been a long, long
What did
time.
you say?
Since I've been on the board, they have
It's the
not.
CBA, okay, then I'm
Just, again, they don't have a whole lot going on, but again,
Yeah.
just new members appointed, and it just might be good to check in.
There's a long list.
There are,
We
we
could
can
do-
keep going.
All right, so let's stop. We got to now. And because we got it, we got a really important thing to do with the DPW. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
All right.
All right, so that's it, except for DPW. So Lisa, you
All right.
want to recuse yourself
You will give
and
me 1 minute. I'm actually gonna leave.
Okay.
Good night, all.
Lucky one.
I'm sorry. Benefits.
Watch out. Watch out.
Yeah, you're good. Grab my coat. Screw out.
Mark is.
See you. Please, sir. You had some stuff for you tomorrow.
Tomorrow or something.
Okay.
I have to anyway. So-
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Bye-bye. Okay, so Ms. Roger is officially accused herself because her husband is a DPW contracting invoice. No. Contract. Okay, so now, so Mark, you want to do your update first, as far as the DPW's superintendent search.
So just to let the board know, that, first round interviews are happening tomorrow and Friday. And then the second round with me is looking to be scheduled, the end of next week or the beginning of the week after. So that I will meet my, self-imposed deadline, of getting names of finalists to the board, before the Christmas holiday. And then, you know, the board schedule, those final interviews. I believe the chair made a comment that, you know, you're really not, interested in trying to meet him between Christmas and New Year's. And so, yeah, like I said, and so that, you know, you can have that discussion, so likelihood, you know, I think the board will, has the possibility of achieving, holding your final interviews and possibly making a selection for a candidate, before, January 6th. And then at that point, you'll need to look at, you know, contract negotiations, and then, there'll be some level of notice period. For a candidate. So again, we're probably looking, I would say, you know, maybe near the end of February for, the new person starts, which leads into.
Transition.
And at first, I want to apologize. We tried, you know, from my perspective, try not to give you things late. You know, try to make sure you've got time to look at everything in that, but, you know, this has been fairly fluid. And so, you know, I try to get you things as soon as I can. And, you know, if there's things that you want to call me, I want to, you know, ask questions about that, I ask that you do that, just to try to make these things move, you know, move well in meetings. So you had in your packet, from the, memo regarding the, interim DPW superintendent. It basically, the beginning of that basically outlines what I just outlined. I have had, conversations with Ms. Galligan, and she has expressed a willingness to stay, beyond, her January 6th resignation date. She, you know, she's looking to commit, up to 6 hours in person. She'd be available remotely, as needed. And, you know, she was seeking a rate of $150 an hour. I will clarify, you know, in other conversations that I've had with her today, she really is more interested in helping to transition, whoever the successful candidate is into the position when that happens. And trying to bring them, help get them up to speed. She's more interested in that piece of it than I think that she is from January 6th to the new person for the bridge period.
Which is what I read into the rate. It's pretty stiff rate.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide that color. I did have a conversation today with her, and, you know, I wanted to make sure that, you know, I'm at least fairly presenting this to the board. I also, recently, spoke, to a gentleman, his name is Abdul Al-Khatib. He's recently retired from municipal service. I didn't realize, but he was in Whitford. And, I happened to work with him, when I was in Framingham as assistant town manager. He was the deputy director of public works. He then, left that position, and I provided you a copy of his resume so that you had that. He then went on to work, for the town of Hayward for 16 years as director. And then retired, just about a year ago. You know, he and I chatted about the position, what I'm looking for. And, you know, up to 25 hours a week to the position, you know, he's seeking a rate of $75 an hour. You know, I think he would, you know, we're not looking for somebody to come in and change things and do a reorganization. We're looking for somebody to make sure that things continue to move and to help provide the support that operations and the administration will need. You know, they are going to need, you know, we've got good people in the positions, but they're going to need support. They're going to need a front person. They're going to need somebody who's going to need to sign off on the decisions. You know, I don't think it's fair to ask people who are working at lower levels to assume the responsibility of the decision that the superintendent will know. And, you know, so I don't give you a recommendation, but I provide you the options with the understanding that, you know, that Ms. Galligan is more interested in continuing, you know, in providing her assistance with whoever the successful candidate is, rather than getting to the successful candidate.
This gentleman is not a registered professional engineer, that's like,
He is not.
how would you rate his interaction with the public skills?
He's got a very good demeanor about him. He's very, I would say his demeanor is professional, but very, receptive. He's got a very low key personality, so you're not gonna get him excited, you know, by talking about that. I think he was very good in the administration pieces, when, you know, that I recall working, framing him and helping to shepherd some of the projects. We had a lot of capital projects. In fact, we got to the point where they just decided not to, you know, to fund anymore for a while because they had such a backlog. So, you know, he was very good with that, and he did a lot, you know, with the administrative staff. And again, I think you need somebody for that public piece. And I think he can handle that piece, you know, very well. He's got the personality that I think that would handle it where we needed him.
Good. So this is something that's would be. We're going interim DPW superintendent for like 6 weeks.
So I would suggest,
Yeah.
I mean, I was talking with Ms. Hale about this today, and I think we'd structure the contract. And I think we did this in the period, and I'm trying to look, and I'm not sure if you were here. This broad she was left. And I'm not sure if she was either, but when we hired the interim police chief before we hired Chief Paulus, I believe we structured that contract to a certain date. And then it was extended in 30-day increments, you know, at the town's discretion. So I think we'd probably look to do something, you know, to the end of February. And then we could look to extend in increments based on at our discretion.
Yeah.
So.
This gentleman has plans that he's willing to forego if we offer this to him, so it's probably considerate to make a decision tonight. He's got a cruise plan that he's not gonna go, but he needs to know what's going on to just know.
I'd say do it.
I think we have a need. Someone has the relevant experience.
He's been head of DPW.
Close enough, actually. Yeah.
He's right next door, so he's very close. Yeah, right now.
So,
And then.
I'm sorry, no, I would, if you're looking to do this, you know, obviously you can't have a superintendent and an interim superintendent at the same time, so obviously you would make that appointment effective the 7th.
Right.
However, you know, I probably would look to do, you know, in the contract to have him available
For that, yeah.
you know, sometime that week to be able to help transition a little bit, because I'd like to set up some meetings with the operations supervisor with, the office staff to understand, because again, how many hours we think we envision, and then having conversations to determine what we think it would take. It would not be more than the 20 to 25, but it might not be the 20-25%.
But why not have an agreement that basically the contract employee
Mhm.
until January 7th, at which point he becomes the acting or interim superintendent,
Sure.
and the hourly rate for both of us. I would think that it would make sense to have it then before Karen retires.
Remember, the first is Sundays, the second were closed because that's when the holidays start. So it'd be the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth that would,
I would say, start as soon as he's available, start getting up to speed on some things. Seems to me there's a lot going on, Kathy, as you pointed out, so if you've got time to spend time over the next few weeks here to chat with Karen, very high.
I mean, I think. And I think, getting that understanding, we get a great operations supervisor, right, Chris Lieber. And he does a very nice job, and he knows what's going on and what needs to, to happen in order to keep things moving forward. I think we just need to make sure that we can provide whatever support we need, that he needs from the top to him. So to have those conversations and understand that, and what is the administrative staff looking for support, for a lot of those things. I just want to make sure that we give people what they need, to try to continue to have that department be successful in the interim while we're in between superintendents.
okay. Chelsea's got to relieve a babysitter any minute now. So does everybody agree that we are going to offer this gentleman the interim job?
Yes.
Thing, and let Mark negotiate the contract agreement with him?
Yes. And I don't mean to break this out for good time to get that important question, so. From your memo, are you suggesting that Karen is also like available on call in addition to this gentleman, or it's?
We're talking about, I think, the position of the interim.
Yeah.
So I think you're picking one or. Now, I do, I don't specifically know the answer as to, is she gonna charge us to take phone calls? I would hesitate to say yes. So,
But it
but,
makes sense to have a contract with her. on an
but I
hourly
think
basis.
it's gonna, well, I'd like to have, I think we should have something with her beyond January 6th, but not.
Understood.
Okay, so but I agree that I think there needs to be, if there are parameters, so to speak, I think we need to understand those. And the board needs to have some level of commitment to them before she leaves on the 6th.
Yeah, but hopefully she'd be available by phone or on call, if you will, from the interim superintendent. if he has
Sure.
questions.
Yep.
During that period, and then when a new person comes in, available as a consultant. whatever.
Right.
So you could structure that kind of an agreement with her,
Right,
and if we use it, great, if we don't need it.
and is it a billable or is it?
Well, I think you just need to get it on the table, right? So, it's clear, and maybe just, put that together too, with the memo to us as far as what she had agreed to as far as what would be reasonable.
Sure.
We need to vote this.
Yeah, I think we should, just to be clear. Okay, so I'll make a motion to, ask Mr. Purple to, enter into a contract with Mr., and I don't know how to say this,
Al-Khatib.
As interim DPW director, beginning January 7th, 2023. Through, sometime in February, with the ability to possibly extend it. Okay.
Second,
Mhm. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? So 4-0.
I have a slightly related question. I'm actually interested in seeing the resumes of ones who intend to apply. Can I stop at those markets?
What?
I'm interested in seeing the resumes of the 10 who have applied. Can
I don't have them.
Look at those.
I don't have them, so.
Who does?
Who does?
Who does?
The sale has them, but,
Any reason I can't take a look? Curious.
it's normally a closed process until we get the final,
Why is that?
until it's a finalist. Because there's a confidentiality around the process. So
I'm not gonna
I'm
comment.
happy to have that conversation with you offline.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Okay. We did it.
Public
So,
comment.
any further public comment from our, small public? Anyone here?
Three attendees, none of them up.
Okay, so there's no public comment, so motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Everyone, say, right, Chelsea, go.
Are you in